When my daughter got home from a Christmas party at her grandparents' house, she was in tears. She looked upset as she quietly gave me a wrapped gift. "Look at this, Mom," she asked. "Why do I have to go through this?" I didn't know what to say. As soon as I opened the package, I knew it wasn't right. As a child, I instantly called the police to report what happened, which led to the gift giver's actions being made public and causing chaos. This event caused a lot of trouble in the family, and the person who did it had to deal with harsh results. I started a new job at age 34 after a rude comment from a previous boss. I am now 45 years old, and my younger husband works for the same company. At my current job, skills are more important than age or gender, and my husband, who was my boss at the time, was very supportive. We got married right away and now have a sweet fourth-grade daughter who loves to read and is kind to everyone. However, I don't get along well with my husband's sister. Even though I get along well with my in-laws, she doesn't like that I'm older than my husband and makes fun of how quickly we got married. It hurt to hear her say mean things about my age and the changes in my body from being pregnant, but I tried to keep my cool for my own peace of mind. Her attitude only changed after she had a quick wedding and moved away, which cut down on our time together and stopped her from making fun of me. This change lets me focus on getting ready to meet our daughter. Even though giving birth was hard, the birth of our daughter was a happy event in our lives that cleared the sadness that had been affecting our happiness. During the birth of our daughter, it was very important for me to have my husband's steadfast support and positive words. When she cried for the first time in the delivery room, his thanks and appreciation for my work made us both cry tears of joy. But 5 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a boy and started coming to our house again. Each visit took an hour. Her goal seemed to be to make negative comparisons between our kids and to say mean things about my age, which made my daughter feel bad. She said it was clear from the lines she said were on my daughter's face compared to her child's smooth skin. Her brazenness astounded me as I was adjusting to being a parent for the first time. She wouldn't bring any baby necessities with her, but she would leave with diapers and formula, saying she didn't want to run out. This action really confused me. It seemed like the main reason she came was to put me down and then take goods, like it was her right. Because of her husband's job, they had to move to a different state, so she stopped visiting. This brought some peace for a short time, until our daughter started grade school and found out that her cousin was also there. Even though our family relationships were tense, our daughter and her cousin became close friends. She took care of him because she was older, nicer, and more honest. He became well-liked by his friends. They were in the same class by the 3rd grade, and my daughter got praise for a reading review she did over the summer. It was even printed in the local newspaper. Family and friends were talking about this accomplishment, especially when I visited my in-laws. A lot of family members got together this time, maybe because my daughter got an award. But my sister-in-law seemed uneasy about the attention our family was getting. A woman claimed that it was unfair and said the famous book was meant for her son, even though the kids had already read both books and agreed to trade them. The fact that they chose which book report to write together was a team effort that my nephew liked. This event showed how the kids could share and help each other, which was very different from the adults' arguments and confusion. My nephew really liked the book my daughter read first, so she was kind and let him pick it out. When I told my sister-in-law this story, she wrongly thought I wrote the award-winning reflection for my daughter. She may have remembered that I liked writing books in college, which she probably got from my husband and didn't tell me. She was also spreading lies at school about me, saying that I had used my personal ties with the competition judges to give my daughter's entry an unfair edge. The spread of these false charges made my daughter so sad that she stopped enjoying reading, which she used to really enjoy. For me, this was the last blow. I couldn't stand to see her so down, both because of the lies being spread about me and because she was the target of mean-spirited rumors. I told my husband about his sister's mean behavior toward me for the first time since we got married before I did anything else. This included taking clothes meant for our daughter, saying mean things about my looks while I was pregnant, and comparing me to a sumo wrestler because she thought babies couldn't tell the difference between gender-specific clothes. My husband agreed that it was time to involve his parents because he was so angry about his sister's behavior. He insisted on telling my sister-in-law about the problem in person, so he went to her house with his parents. Her initial happiness at having her family visit out of the blue quickly turned to shock when my husband gave her a harsh warning. When she was called out, she got angry and blamed me for exposing her to her favorite brother. By making herself the victim, she was trying to avoid taking responsibility. At first, I returned her calls because I thought she was trying to make things right. But it turned out she was just venting her anger. In the end, I set her phone number to go straight to voicemail, so when she tried to call, I didn't answer. I thought at first that she had lost interest when the calls stopped after a few weeks. It turned out that wasn't the reason, though. My in-laws hosted their first ever children's Christmas party in December, which made me wonder why they chose that month. No matter what, my daughter was thrilled to be asked. She remembered the fun Christmas party she had in kindergarten and hoped for something similar at her elementary school. But they couldn't hold one because of their policy on religious events. I'd often wonder why people have to strictly follow faith traditions when Christmas has become a holiday that people all over the world love and celebrate in their own unique ways. I've been noticing that some parents are very careful to keep their faith in mind when they talk about their kids. My daughter and I have celebrated Christmas quietly at home for the past 2 years, choosing to enjoy the holiday in our own unique way. She really liked the gift swap, which was one of the best parts of our party. This year, my in-laws offered a straightforward budget of $11 for a gift exchange at their Christmas party. My daughter and I went on a little trip to a nearby huge shopping mall to look for the right gift. She finally chose one of her favorite picture books because she wanted to tell someone else about the story and how much it made her happy. On the day of the party, she left with the gift and went to my in-laws' house, which was only a short bus ride from our house. After telling my mother-in-law that she was coming, she offered to pick her up from the bus stop. Later, she called to let me know that my daughter had arrived safely, which temporarily eased my fears. But the peace didn't last long. After only 50 minutes, the sound of the front door opening on a weekday caught me off guard. My husband was at work, and I was working from home while my daughter was on winter break. The scene I saw when I got there broke my heart. My daughter crying by the door. She gave me a gift-wrapped bag that looked like the things inside would make sense of everything. I found a scary card written in red ink inside the bag, along with a newspaper with her reading reflection torn into pieces. The card warned us not to be too cocky, or we might end up like the mutilated stuffed animal inside the bag, which was cut up and stained with red ink to look like blood. This upsetting act was not at all a harmless joke. When my daughter informed me that my sister-in-law had made this ominous gift, I was shocked. People agreed that adults would not bring gifts to the party because it was supposed to be a happy, kid-focused event. Still, even though I wasn't going with my daughter to the party, I was shocked to find out that my sister-in-law was there and did something horrible to my daughter. If my mother-in-law knew that her daughter was there, she would have told me because she always asked that we tell her about any problems her daughter caused. This misunderstanding upset me and showed that someone was trying to hurt us on purpose, but my mother-in-law didn't know about it. When my daughter got home from school, she was upset. I told her she should tell her grandma what happened. But before she could, my aunt spoke up and said that she hadn't called for her, and that only kids from Christian schools were welcome. When my daughter asked me what a mission school was, I didn't know what to say. A family member was recently accepted into a mission school, which caused a lot of talk in the family. My sister-in-law's son went to a Christian kindergarten. We had heard of family members who didn't know they had ties to these kinds of schools until they started going. We made a different choice. For our daughter, we chose a neighborhood kindergarten and a public grade school. It looked like my sister-in-law used this as another chance to put down my daughter. The frightening gift my daughter got made me very angry, so I hurried to the police station and made it clear how serious the threat was. Even though the police didn't want to get involved at first and said it should be handled as a family problem, luckily a female officer saw how serious the situation was. She understood our fear and promised to visit my sister-in-law that evening with a warning. She knew that threats and violence within families are crimes that need to be reported. I told my angry husband about what happened during the day when he got home. He spoke out against his sister's mean behavior and called his parents, who were holding the Christmas party, but said they didn't know about it. They thought my sister-in-law might have broken in through a back door that wasn't locked while my mother-in-law was busy with other things. The little kids in the family were given the party to plan. After the police officer gave my sister-in-law a harsh warning about what would happen if she didn't change, my in-laws, worried that she might have done something wrong, called a family meeting to talk about it. My sister-in-law and her husband showed up late to the meeting at my in-laws' house. She was clearly upset and not sorry about the police presence, and her husband didn't seem to know what the meeting was for. This situation made the problem seem even worse, which led the family to talk about how to move forward and deal with the root problems. When the husband of my sister-in-law's sister finally found out what his wife had done to our family, he was shocked. Before that, he had no idea how bad things were. When he apologized to us, he seemed truly sorry, which was very different from my sister-in-law, who stayed stubborn and refused to say sorry. Everyone remained silent as she argued that the fact that the police did not arrest her proved her innocence, which was difficult for us to comprehend. Surprisingly, he told her he was going to divorce her. No one saw any outward signs of trouble in their marriage, so this news shocked everyone. He gave a history of putting up with her behavior, which had gone from ignoring housework and child care to making people afraid because she wasn't paying attention. Her concern with how she looked led her to make a lot of moves that weren't necessary. She didn't do these things because it was necessary for her job. Rather, she did them because she was vain and wanted to maintain a certain social status. She often said that their moves were okay because she had high hopes for their son. For example, she tried to get him into fancy kindergartens but failed, which made her feel even worse about herself. In the end, they chose a public school because that's what their son wanted. Even though his wife didn't want to at first, her father supported the choice. The husband's decision to divorce her wasn't a spontaneous one. Rather, it was the result of years of resentment that her most recent abuse had exacerbated. When she heard about the divorce, my sister-in-law was caught off guard. She tried to say sorry, but it was weak and seemed like a last-ditch effort to fix things by saying they were just jokes or pranks. But her actions, especially the mean message she sent to a child, were too serious to be laughed off. This kind of behavior, which could make even adults scared, was unacceptable and showed how trust had been broken in the family forever. I talked to her about it and pointed out how different her actions were from what a caring mom would do. I told her, just because you're a parent doesn't mean you automatically have parental instincts. I meant to show that her behavior was very different from what someone in that job should do. When my husband saw her crying, he told her very clearly that crying wasn't going to help. She shouldn't think that pity will make people forgive her, especially since she is old. She kept crying even though she didn't do anything wrong and wondered why she was being blamed. She even said that the family didn't like me because I was married to her brother, which made it sound like the problem was with me being older than her. The fact that she didn't understand how bad her actions were left us all speechless. My husband was especially shocked that she didn't get it. There was a lot of unsolved stress in the room, so the conversation stopped all of a sudden. Her husband had to take her home. She refused to accept responsibility for her errors, which harmed the divorce process later. It wasn't until her son told her the truth about the Christmas party that things changed, and she reluctantly agreed to the divorce. Her son told his friends about the scary gift exchange he saw, especially the upsetting picture of a stuffed animal that was smashed and stained with red that looked like blood. People at school heard about this statement very quickly, which made both teachers and parents worried. After this news came out, it was hard for my daughter to go back to school. The event And the rumors that connected her to her cousin's story made her feel down. People started to guess what link there was between her absence and what happened at the Christmas party, which showed how one careless action can change the lives of many people. I had thought that everything could have been taken care of quietly so that my daughter could go back to school when she was ready. When her cousin told her about the upsetting event, it wasn't to make her laugh. It was a desperate plea for his mother to stop doing what was hurting him. When her husband saw how these revelations affected people, he felt he had to speed up the divorce process and agreed to her terms just to end their split. By that time, she was really well known in the neighborhood for being scary around kids, which made her friends avoid her and even neighbors dislike her. She felt stuck and shamed, so she saw the split as a way out. She thought that going back to live with her parents would make her feel better, but her ex-husband was adamant about keeping custody of their son, and she didn't fight the decision. Instead, she coldly told her son that she didn't care about him because she was planning to get married again and kids were getting in the way of her plans. Her mean words made her son bravely turn her down. He told her he didn't need her in his life and that he was happier with his dad's care. He also told her not to talk to his cousin. When she went back to her parents' house, she was not allowed to stay, which made things worse for her. She had to deal with the effects of her acts by herself. Her downhill spiral put her in dangerous positions. For basic needs, taking out loans from sketchy sources, and then she disappeared from our lives. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report because they saw her absence as an answer. After that, my daughter got the courage to go back to school, where her cousin is still there to support her and promised to look out for her. Unexpectedly, this hard time has brought our families closer together, especially with my ex-brother-in-law, as we work together to help the kids. In the absence of my sister-in-law, my in-laws have taken care of and loved both of my grandkids with open arms. Now that she's not around, our family is at peace and has built a strong, trusted bond that was missing before.
Hello, are you Yumi's mother? I'm calling from the nursery school. Ha! What is it? I was puzzled by the sudden call from the nursery school. At first, I thought it might be some kind of prank, but then the teacher on the other end of the line spoke in a somewhat stern tone. Could you please come to pick up Yumi? The time we can keep her has already passed. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. I am sorry, but my daughter passed away a month ago. My name is Hazel. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a company employee. Currently, I'm dating a man named Nathan. We met at a mixer, and since we were the same age and had similar interests, we hit it off. He seemed like a typical company employee, stable, calm, and sensible. These qualities are important to me, especially since we're at an age where marriage is on the horizon. It's no longer just about appearances. Nathan is a kind person who exceeds my expectations and makes me feel at ease. On our dates, he always comes up with creative ideas, and when we spend time at his place, he prepares delicious meals with impressive skill. This eggplant dish is really good, isn't it? He said one evening, serving up a meal. It's surprisingly easy. I just make it quickly in the microwave. That's amazing. You're really good at Japanese cuisine, I replied, impressed. Yeah, actually my family runs a small restaurant. Really? This was something I learned when we first started dating. Nathan's family lives in the countryside and operates a small restaurant. He learned to cook from his father, who is a chef, and as a result he's very skilled in the kitchen, capable of making a variety of dishes. Do you have any siblings? I asked. Yeah, I have a younger sister, he answered. Knowing that he had a sister meant he was the eldest son, which made me wonder if he might take over the family business someday. What are you thinking about doing in the future? With your job, I inquired. After a pause, he replied, after working at the company for a bit longer, I plan to return to my hometown and take over the family's small restaurant. I think I'll start with a training period. Oh, is that so? I was a bit taken aback by his plans. If we were to get married, I'd have to leave my current job and move with him. I work as a web designer, and I really enjoy my job. I hadn't considered quitting anytime soon, but at the same time, I wanted to be with Nathan. Before I knew it, I found myself discussing this dilemma with a senior colleague at work. Then why don't you try applying for remote work? She suggested. Really? The advantage of our job is that we can do it anywhere as long as we have a computer. If you manage your work properly, some companies will allow you to work from home. I'm sure your company can accommodate that too. Is that so? Hearing her words filled me with hope. This meant I could continue my current job even if I moved with Nathan. In fact, after I talked to Nathan about the future, he admitted that he had been thinking he would have to make me quit my job and take me with him if we got married, which had made things feel a bit awkward between us. I immediately asked my boss if it was possible to switch to remote work. If you meet the criteria set by the company, there should be no problem, was the response. As for the internet connection and computer, everything was falling into place. This meant that if I wanted to, I could move to Nathan's hometown right away. After confirming with my boss, I shared the news with Nathan on our next date. Really? So you mean you can continue your current job while living in my hometown? He asked, a mixture of surprise and relief on his face. Yes, that's possible, I replied with a smile. That's great. He looked genuinely relieved, and seeing his expression made me feel the same way. It didn't take long after that for us to decide to get married. Hazel, if you don't mind, would you marry me and move to my hometown? Nathan asked one evening, his voice filled with sincerity. Yes, I'd love to, I said without hesitation. And so, we decided to tie the knot. When I told my parents about the move, they seemed a bit sad but ultimately supported me, sending me off with the words, "Be happy." Nathan and I got married and started our life together. He began working at his family's small restaurant under his father's guidance. Since the restaurant was next to his parents' house, we initially lived with them. At the suggestion of my in-laws who wanted Nathan to focus on learning the business without worrying about household chores, they proposed that we stay with them to lighten our load. However, I would later realize that this decision was a mistake. Living with my in-laws turned out to be more challenging than I had anticipated. Hazel, how long do you intend to stay holed up in your room? My mother-in-law, Susan, said one day, knocking on the door forcefully. I'm working, Susan. I'm actually working right now, I explained. Working? You're always in your room. What kind of work are you doing? Are you trying to deceive me with that excuse? She retorted, her tone filled with suspicion. I'll never accept it, my mother-in-law declared. But I really am working, I insisted. Don't lie. You're just playing around, drawing pictures on that computer, aren't you? She snapped, glancing at my screen. This is called web design. It's my job, I explained, trying to remain patient. I won't be fooled. It's shameful for an adult to be wasting time drawing pictures, she retorted. My mother-in-law likely held old-fashioned views and didn't seem to grasp the concept of working from home. To her, I wasn't really working. I was just cooped up at home, neglecting household chores. I never thought I'd have such a lazy daughter-in-law. Nathan is working hard to become first class, and here you are, playing around like a parasite. Try to be more useful, she criticized almost daily, making it increasingly difficult for me to concentrate on my work. Desperate to change the situation, I decided to talk to my husband about it. Oh, my mom's getting in the way of your work? Nathan asked when I brought it up. Yes, it's like she doesn't understand I'm working from home. She thinks I'm just goofing off, I explained. I see. My mom has old-fashioned ideas, so it might be inevitable. I'll talk to her, he assured me. Nathan's support gave me some relief, but my mother-in-law was more stubborn than I had anticipated. How did you convince Nathan? Why do I have to be scolded? She fumed. It's clear you're just playing around. That's not it. I've been trying to explain. I protested, but our clashes only grew more frequent. Each time she made unreasonable remarks, I turned to Nathan for help. But over time, he seemed less willing to mediate. This is a problem between the two of you. Solve it yourselves, he said one day. Just as I was beginning to feel I couldn't take it anymore, something unexpected happened. Feeling unwell, I went to the hospital, only to be shocked by the news. I was pregnant. My mother-in-law had often pressured me to provide a successor, but I never imagined getting pregnant at such a tumultuous time. I immediately informed my husband and in-laws about the pregnancy. The news took everyone by surprise, but my mother-in-law was especially stunned. Well done, she said, clearly delighted. Both my husband and father-in-law were happy too, but my mother-in-law's joy was the most apparent. Since then, she had become much kinder to me. Hazel, how are you feeling? I'll handle the household chores so you don't overdo it, she offered. Her sudden change in attitude was a relief. The scolding and bullying that had once been a daily occurrence stopped, and instead, she became supportive and caring about my health. It was comforting to have the previously confrontational mother-in-law offer me support during this challenging time. Despite the initial strain on my relationship with my husband, things began to improve, and our bond grew stronger. I settled into a stable condition as I prepared for childbirth. However, a new issue emerged during this time. Sometime after the news of my pregnancy, my mother-in-law asked, "By the way, can you tell the baby's gender yet?" "Yes, it's a girl," I replied honestly. Her face fell with disappointment. "A girl? It should have been a boy. Our restaurant has always been passed down to males. Women inheriting such businesses is unheard of." I tried to reason with her. "That's unacceptable. Nowadays, women can inherit businesses too." Her response was harsh. "Don't try to justify yourself with your strange values. You're clearly not suited for this." Although my father-in-law and husband were slightly disappointed that the baby wasn't a boy, they weren't as upset as my mother-in-law. However, her disapproval quickly turned into hostility. "Having no heir means you're worthless. How long are you going to stay in bed? Get up and do some housework," she demanded. "I'm sorry, but I've been really sick with morning sickness," I explained. "Don't be so spoiled. Pregnancy is not an illness. Get moving," she shouted as she came to wake me. Facing both poor health and harsh treatment, I decided to go against my in-laws' wishes and return to my parents' house for the birth. Spending time at my parents' home felt like a long-awaited relief. While I found great relief both mentally and physically during my time at my parents' home, it was clear that my stay with my in-laws had been a significant source of stress. After some time at my parents' place, my daughter was finally born. My husband and I had chosen the name Yi for her, and she was absolutely adorable. I made a firm promise to protect her with all my heart. Perhaps because the hospital where I gave birth was in my hometown, none of my in-laws visited. Not even once. I had hoped my husband would come, but he couldn't make it due to the restaurant's demands. After resting and regaining my health, I decided to return to my in-laws' home, but I quickly regretted it. My mother-in-law greeted me with an angry expression. "You've taken your sweet time bringing back my grandchild. Why the delay?" "I'm sorry. I needed some rest," I explained. "Rest? We've been incredibly busy." "What do you mean by busy?" she retorted. "The restaurant was featured in magazines and on TV, and we've been fully booked every day. I even had to help out there," I said. "I see. That's why I need you to come to the restaurant immediately," my mother-in-law demanded. Feeling overwhelmed, I saw no other option. My husband also urged me to help, explaining that the restaurant was in trouble. Reluctantly, I put my daughter in daycare and began assisting at my in-laws' restaurant. The real challenge started then. I had to work at the restaurant every day, manage all the household chores, and care for my child. My health was deteriorating, and on top of that, I was subjected to constant verbal abuse from my mother-in-law, which pushed me to my mental limits. Amidst all this, one day, I suddenly collapsed and was diagnosed with a stress-induced gastric ulcer. After regaining consciousness, I explained my situation to the doctor, who advised that I would need a longer hospital stay than usual. When I informed my mother-in-law, her response was devoid of concern. "What a troubled woman," she said dismissively over the phone. Meanwhile, my husband apologized, saying, "I'm sorry for pushing you too hard." But it felt too little, too late. I couldn't shake the feeling that he too was responsible for letting things spiral so badly. During my hospital stay, Rose, who worked at a small restaurant, came to my aid. "I'll take care of you," she said. "I'll handle the drop-offs and pickups for your daughter." "Thank you so much," I said, deeply relieved. Rose's help with daycare was a lifeline, allowing me to focus on my recovery with some peace of mind. However, a few weeks into my hospitalization, I received a frantic call from my husband. "Hazel, please calm down and listen. Yumi, she's died. She was caught in a big fire, and her body couldn't be saved." The words struck me like a blow, and I could barely process the news. "I'm sorry, but I'm also suffering," he said. The shocking news left me deeply unsettled. When I returned to my in-laws' home after being discharged, I was met with the grim sight of an urn containing my daughter's ashes. Overwhelmed with grief, I was further stunned by my husband's next statement. "I'm giving you this urn and asking for a divorce. I can't continue our marriage with the loss of our daughter and the ongoing issues with my mother. I understand if you're fed up with the situation." "I am," I said. "I'm done with your mother's bullying and your inability to protect me. I'll leave." Determined to move on, I decided to leave my in-laws' home and pursue a divorce. When I returned to my parents' house, their warm welcome provided a much-needed source of comfort in the depths of my sorrow. When I explained my situation to my company where I had been taking time off, they were understanding and allowed me to extend my leave. After a month of rest, I received an unexpected phone call. "Hello, is this Yumi's mother? This is a staff member from the nursery. Why are you calling?" I was initially puzzled and thought it might be a joke. But the voice on the other end was stern. "Could you please come and pick up Yumi? It's past the time we can keep her." Confused, I replied, "I'm sorry, but my daughter passed away a month ago." The teacher's tone shifted to anger. "Why would you say such a thing? It's unthinkable to neglect your own child. Please come quickly." Overwhelmed by their reaction, I rushed to the nursery. To my shock, I found Yumi there, alive and laughing joyously. The relief of seeing her safe was immense. A teacher approached me, clearly having realized the misunderstanding. "We were told by your mother-in-law that you were too busy to pick up Yumi, so she's been bringing her here daily." Hearing that my mother-in-law had falsely claimed Yumi was in my care while she was actually alive at the nursery filled me with rage. My contact information was listed as the emergency contact, which is why the nursery had called me. My husband and father-in-law had deceived me, and I was furious. Taking Yumi, I returned to my parents' home. As I settled in, I received a call from an unknown number. It was my mother-in-law. "Why did you take Yumi back without permission?" she yelled. I retorted, "Why did you lie about Yumi's death? I found out she was alive and left at the nursery. If you all want to lie to make things easier for yourselves, that ends now. I will raise my daughter myself. Do as you like, but don't contact me again." My mother-in-law was silent and then hung up. Fueled by anger, I resolved to uncover the full truth about the situation. I went to my in-laws' house armed with important documents. "What are you doing here?" my mother-in-law asked, visibly surprised. That day, the restaurant was closed and the whole family was at home, including another key person. "I've come to discuss the affair between Nathan and Rose," I said. The mention of the affair visibly shook my in-laws. "Affair? What are you talking about?" my ex-husband asked, his face paling. I presented documents proving that Rose was pregnant and that Nathan was the father. According to these, Rose was pregnant around the time I gave birth. While I was in the dark, you two were involved in an affair that led to this pregnancy. To cover it up, you lied to me about Yumi's death. Their faces turned even whiter as they absorbed my words. "I'm relieved that Yumi is safe, but I will be demanding compensation for my mental distress and child support," I declared. My ex-husband began to apologize profusely. "I'm truly sorry. It was wrong. This was all my mother's idea, and I was against it. We intended to put Yumi in a child welfare institution." "Child welfare institution? What are you talking about?" I demanded. He revealed a shocking truth. The plan had been to fake Yumi's death and place her in a child welfare institution to avoid paying compensation and child support. My anger reached its peak. "I'm truly sorry. Please, I beg you to overlook the compensation and child support," he pleaded. "There's no way I can forgive that. I'm going to sue you. Be prepared," I replied, and left the house. Following these events, I demanded compensation from Nathan and Rose and sought child support from my ex-husband. I also detailed the situation to neighbors, regular customers of the restaurant, and mothers from the nursery school. The scandal spread quickly, tarnishing my in-laws' reputation. As word spread on social media and even new customers who had heard about the restaurant through magazines stopped coming, the family's small restaurant was forced to close within a year. It felt like just deserts for their despicable actions. Meanwhile, I continued working from home at my parents' house, focusing on raising my daughter. She's growing up well, and both my parents and I are delighted to see her thrive. I plan to keep working hard for her future. Since childhood, I harbored a deep resentment toward my stunning younger sister. She always seemed to covet everything that was mine. I was constantly told, "You're the older sister. You should be patient." And despite following that advice, she ended up taking my husband away from me. To make matters worse, I was pregnant at the time. Now, after all she's done, she has the audacity to demand a grand celebration for herself. It's shocking and brazen. But I'm no longer alone. As a single mother, life has been incredibly challenging, but I've found my own strength and support. "Shall I lend you my husband?" she taunts. But honestly, I'm doing just fine on my own. My name is Taylor. At 29, I work as a librarian, with my jet black hair pulled back, a face rarely touched by makeup, and thick sense glasses perched on my nose. My freckles are my unique charm, though they're often overshadowed by my understated look. I'm simply an ordinary yet remarkable woman. In stark contrast, my younger sister Yasmin, just a year younger than me, is slender with fair skin, her beautifully curled hair always styled to perfection. With her expertly applied makeup and dazzling smile, she greets everyone with a charismatic American flair. It's hard to believe she comes from the same parents as me, given how strikingly beautiful and charming she is. Our parents showered her with adoration, the beauty who was loved by everyone. The disparity in the affection we received was glaring, and I found myself always in the background, yearning for their attention. Determined to make a difference despite my appearance, I threw myself into everything with relentless dedication. I poured my heart into my studies, convinced that while I couldn't change how I looked, I could transform my future through hard work. As a shy student with few friends, I spent my free time studying at home. And on weekends, while my classmates enjoyed their time outside, I was confined to my room, absorbed in my books. My relentless focus on academics paid off, and I earned a place at a prestigious, nationally renowned school. I hoped that Yasmin's disinterest in academics would finally give me a break from our constant competition. But to my utter disbelief, the following year, she was accepted into the same prestigious school. "You got into the same school as Taylor. You must have worked so hard. Not only are you beautiful, but you're smart too." Taylor barely made it in, especially with all the money spent on the tours. "Dad, don't say that. I just happened to study what was on the exam, that's all," my sister boasted with a smile directed at me. I was frozen, overwhelmed with a mix of joy and frustration. The thought of attending school with my sister again should have been exciting. But instead, I felt a deep sense of frustration and inadequacy. Wishing I could vanish, I fled to my room and slammed the door behind me, overhearing my parents' exasperated comments. On the day of my sister's acceptance announcement, I was bedridden with a fever, feeling utterly defeated. It was a crushing blow. After working so hard to earn my place at this school, I had hoped to finally escape the endless comparisons with my sister. It felt as though fate was unjust. Yasmin seemed to excel at everything effortlessly, always topping the grades and showcasing talents I couldn't match. I know that being negative and envious isn't productive, but it's difficult to stay positive in situations like this. No one seems to understand what I'm going through, so I find myself burying my head in my pillow, silently crying out of frustration. I can't help but feel a deep-seated resentment toward Yasmin. Since my beautiful and charming younger sister started high school, she quickly became the center of attention, with even rumors swirling about her potential modeling career. My own high school life, once filled with its own moments, took a turn for the worse as I faced teasing from the boys in my class. "Yasmin, isn't your little sister the one in the first year? You two don't look anything alike." "Give me a break. I'm always being compared to my sister," I'd retort, though those days felt like an endless struggle. I began to withdraw from others, feeling like I was living through a personal hell. As a naturally shy person, I isolated myself further, speaking only minimally in class and losing myself in my beloved books. Even when there were opportunities to connect with boys I had feelings for, I never had the courage to approach them. Meanwhile, my striking sister seemed to have an uncanny knack for navigating those social situations with ease, almost like a hawk spotting its prey. "Big sis, you're interested in that boy from the news club, aren't you?" I was taken aback by her keen observation. I turned to her, meeting her sweet smile with a mix of annoyance and resignation. Her response was predictable. "You might want to reconsider. I dated him for a while, but it was so dull. I broke up with him quickly." My sister had a habit of belittling anyone I had even a hint of interest in, always swooping in to date and then discard them. Her string of boyfriends seemed endless, yet no bad rumors ever followed her, likely because her charm and looks kept men enchanted despite her fickleness. If only I had her appearance, I could live more genuinely without causing hurt. Life felt so unfair. After graduating from high school, I finally enjoyed a period of peace, despite my sister following me to the same university. Fortunately, the campus was so large that our paths rarely crossed. Grateful for the chance to live independently, I took up our parents' offer and chose to attend a prestigious university. This was my opportunity to step out of my sister's shadow and embrace a new chapter in my life. At university, I began dating a boy from my club who would later become my first husband, Harry. I earned my librarian's qualification and started working at a library after graduation, while Harry secured a job at his dream company. Our professional lives were thriving, and after some time of marriage, I became pregnant with a girl. Life was calm and fulfilling, and I believed it would continue smoothly. However, my sister's return began to disrupt our peaceful life. After facing difficulties at her job in Chicago, she resigned and came back home, unsettling the routine we had built. "Big sis, I'm back again," Yasmin would announce as she frequently dropped by our house for dinner. I wondered why she couldn't just eat at home, but she insisted on having homemade food. It turned out that our mother, who usually does the cooking, had hurt her back and was now relying on ready meals and takeout. Whenever Yasmin visits, the dinner table seems to light up. Harry, who normally avoids cooking and complains even when I suffer from morning sickness, becomes surprisingly enthusiastic in the kitchen whenever Yasmin is around. When I buy ready meals, Harry's cooking seems to taste even better. Yasmin, with her usual charm, would often comment, "I wish I could marry someone like him," while sweetly touching him, who seemed to be captivated by her attention. Her seductive nature was as evident as ever, and I couldn't believe she would be so bold as to flirt with someone else's husband. As my pregnancy progressed and my belly grew, my naive hope that Harry would remain supportive was quickly dashed. Instead, he began to distance himself from home. One day, after returning from a business trip, he delivered shocking news. Yasmin was by his side. "I'm sorry, but I want a divorce. I want to build a new future with Yasmin," Harry said. "What? You're saying this when we're about to have a baby?" I was stunned, and our views naturally clashed. Despite my protests, he insisted he had found true love and was moved by my words. Turning to my sister in disbelief, I asked, "Why him? Harry isn't particularly handsome, nor does he have an extraordinary income." "Well, married men seem stable," Yasmin replied nonchalantly. "I became interested in your husband, and before I knew it, we were drawn to each other. Attracted to each other. Do you realize you're taking the father away from me and our baby?" I could no longer ignore my sister's betrayal. This was beyond forgiveness. "It's my fault, not Yasmin's," Harry said defensively, standing by my sister, who showed no remorse. My anger quickly turned to resignation. In a state of despair, I packed a few belongings and left to inform my parents. They were appalled by the situation. Despite their past favoritism toward my sister, they insisted I stay with them until I could return to work after the birth. The divorce from Harry was finalized without complications, and the following month I welcomed my daughter into the world. 3 years had passed, and I was fortunate to remarry. Since divorcing Harry, my 3-year-old daughter, Amy, has bonded well with my new husband, and we've built a happy life together. Then, out of the blue, I received a call from my sister. "Hello, big sis. How are you? I actually have a baby now. I decided it would be easier to raise a child close to our parents, so I've moved back. Let's catch up soon." For 3 years, there had been no contact from her, neither with me nor with our parents. Now, she was reaching out as if nothing had happened, chatting cheerfully and offering no apologies. I was at a loss for words, surprised by her sudden and casual reappearance. "Of course, prepare lots of gifts. Oh, and ask Mom and Dad to forgive me. It's been 3 years. They can't still be angry," she said abruptly before ending the call. To make matters worse, I later received a text from her that read, "I'll lend you my husband if you need." Since I've been estranged from my sister, I haven't mentioned my remarriage to her. She seems to think I'm still a single mother. As I sighed in frustration, my husband, Ted, came home after finishing work. He's aware of how my sister had taken my previous husband from me. When I told him that my sister was coming to the neighborhood, claiming it was to celebrate her baby's birth, he laughed in surprise. "Your sister really has some nerve. If it were me, I'd be too guilty to show my face," Ted said with a hint of sarcasm, gently holding me from behind. "She's always been like that, beautiful and getting away with everything. I've resented her many times, and the jealousy has never truly faded. It feels like the world really does favor those who are beautiful." Sensing my frustration, Ted offered a reassuring smile. "Beauty is subjective, right? You once said an actor was handsome, but not everyone agrees. Your sister might be considered beautiful, but she's not my type." However, people who get to know her often find themselves charmed by her. I see. Then shall we go and greet her together? Ted suggested. What? I exclaimed in surprise, and Ted laughed heartily. There's nothing for you to worry about. The idea that I could be swayed by your sister is unthinkable. I'd even bet on it. Besides, if we talk things through and establish clear boundaries, it might actually work in your favor, he said, and his words struck a chord with me. He was right. I was tired of living in fear of my sister. Determined to clear my heart and confront the situation head-on, I resolved to meet her in person. On the appointed day, I arrived at the flat where my sister and her family lived. Ted was going to be a bit late due to work commitments. Welcome, big sis, Yasmin greeted me with a bright smile. My ex-husband Harry was also there, looking somewhat awkward. In the room, a tiny baby slept softly in a crib. Isn't he adorable? This child is proof of the love between Harry and me, she said nonchalantly, as if taking my daughter's father from me was of no consequence. Yasmin continued to boast about her happiness and how exceptional her child was. As usual, interacting with her was exhausting. Just being in the same space made me feel tense. By the way, big sis, where's your gift? Oh, did you forget to bring one? I suppose that's to be expected from a single mother with limited income, Yasmin sneered. Just then, I received a message from Ted. Actually, I'm not a single mother anymore. I was fortunate to remarry. My husband wanted to meet you and has arrived. He's even brought a gift. Should I invite him in? Really? I'm curious to meet your new husband, Yasmin said with genuine interest. She opened the front door, only to freeze when she saw Ted standing there. Taylor, sorry to keep you waiting. I got delayed picking up a gift and also had to fetch Amy from kindergarten, Ted said with a cheerful smile. Yasmin's face turned crimson as she softly muttered, Ted, is that you? Yes, that's right, I said. My current husband, Ted, was a classmate from high school. He was academically brilliant, handsome, and quite wealthy, coming from a prominent landowning family. Ted had always stood out in our class. We reconnected at a high school reunion, and after my separation from my previous husband, he pursued me with determination. My sister, who was also in high school at the time, had once tried to make a move on him, but it didn't work out. I can't believe Ted is now my brother-in-law. There's so much I want to catch up on. Can I have your number? Yasmin asked, her voice dripping with overly sweet charm. She acted without restraint next to Ted, despite her own husband, Harry, being present. Ted let out a deep sigh of annoyance. You haven't changed at all. Even if you look good on the outside, I can't stand a bothersome and frivolous woman like you. You're worlds apart from Taylor, Ted said sharply, directing a look of disgust at my sister as he handed over the present. The baby gift he chose was from a popular brand. It was striking how he, of all people, could treat my sister, who was often adored by everyone, with such coldness. I felt he might be the only one who truly values me over her. We're here today not just to offer our congratulations, but also to request that you stay away from my wife in the future. It seems Taylor has been quite stressed because of you, Ted said clearly. I felt a weight lift from my heart. Meanwhile, Harry tried to interact with his daughter Amy after a long time, but Amy rejected him and clung tightly to Ted. Taylor and Amy are my precious family, so please refrain from causing any more trouble, Ted said firmly. And just as a side note, Yasmin's behavior is rather inappropriate. It would be good to observe social etiquette. He then took my hand and our daughters, signaling it was time to leave. Wait just a minute, Taylor, Amy, Harry pleaded desperately. Yasmin, confronted with our indifferent response, turned pale. Ignoring them, we left my sister's flat. I later heard from my parents that Yasmin had decided to divorce Harry. It seems her remarriage to someone like Ted had really unsettled her. She compared Harry to Ted in terms of appearance, personality, and income, which led to a major argument. Yasmin returned home and made a flippant apology, but she still attempted to meet with Ted. It's clear she's clinging to some hope, but it's futile, as Ted has made it clear he dislikes women like her. On my husband's advice, I've completely severed all contact with my sister. After changing jobs, she had an affair with a married supervisor, which was discovered by his wife. Now my sister is being sued by the supervisor's wife. Despite her ongoing allure, it's clear that some parts of her remain unchanged. I can laugh off the stories about her because I'm deeply content with my own family. My husband and daughter bring me immense joy. Currently, I'm pregnant with our second child. My husband and daughter are eagerly anticipating the arrival of our new family member. My husband finds solace in gently rubbing my belly and often expresses how at peace he feels. We're all excited for our future as a family of 4. While physical beauty can influence one's path in life, relying solely on looks is undeniably challenging. I'm focused on personal growth and moving forward without comparing myself to others.
During my sister's wedding ceremony, my father-in-law suddenly said, "To be honest, both my wife and I wish this marriage never happened. We'd end it right now if we could." He looked at me and my sister with a sneer and added, "You're beneath us." My sister, who was in her wedding dress, started to cry. As her older brother, I stood up to defend her and her husband against our father-in-law's attempt to ruin the wedding. The crowd, which had been buzzing with whispers, went silent and then burst into applause. My name is Robert Smith. I'm 30 years old and single. I currently run a small family-owned lunch shop. When I was in college, my parents died in a car accident, so I decided to drop out and take over the family business. I moved back home to live with my sister Emily, who is 6 years younger than me, while I ran the lunch shop. I wanted to become a public servant in the future, but I needed to focus on supporting myself and my sister. Fortunately, my parents left detailed notebooks about the lunch business, including ingredient quantities, recipes, and cost calculations. My father's rough notes were neatly transcribed by my mother, who had beautiful handwriting. Our shop sign, "Smith's Packed Lunch," was handwritten by my mother, adding a personal touch. She always taught me, "Your writing reflects your heart, Robert. Let's make sure you write beautifully." Even though we live in a digital age, I've always cherished handwritten letters. Emily, influenced by me, also had beautiful handwriting. The small 5-square-meter shop and the handwritten recipes are precious assets left by my parents. With the help of loyal part-time workers, I learned how to make the packed lunches. I even earned a culinary license while working. Emily often helped me, which was a great relief. When I was 24 and Emily was 18, she said, "Robert, after I graduate, I'll help you with the shop." I replied, "No, you don't have to push yourself. I'll manage somehow. You should do what you want, Emily." Emily responded, "If I can choose, making packed lunches is what I want to do right now." After graduating from high school, Emily immediately started helping with the family business, for which I was truly grateful. With her help, I began developing original menus. I analyzed what was selling well, refined each packed lunch, reduced the number of items, and focused on a lineup of key products. "Robert, the fried chicken is selling like crazy recently. I modified Dad and Mom's recipe. It's a garlic and ginger sauce flavor that appeals to local tastes. Our spiced chicken curry is also doing pretty well. I hope it continues to do well. Should we increase how much we make?" Emily suggested. As she had predicted, the fried chicken became a hit, spreading quickly by word of mouth. Some regular customers even started ordering the fried chicken curry, which wasn't on the menu, and it eventually became a staple. My father often said, "Our customers are helping our shop grow." Although busy times could be hectic, seeing the part-time workers and Emily working hard along with the happy faces of our customers naturally eased my fatigue after work. As the second-generation owner, I began to believe that Smith's Packed Lunch had the potential for growth and that there was much more we could achieve. "Welcome." Emily's cheerful voice echoed through the store. "Oh, that man is here again. He's a recent regular customer. He's been coming in with the determination to try every item on the menu. You're just one fried chicken box and a special fried chicken curry away from completing the menu." "Quite impressive," Emily said. "I like to save the best for last. Thank you for always making such delicious lunches," the customer replied. Having regular customers is a blessing. On rainy days, sales typically drop, but this customer would even come during storms. "Robert, I have something to tell you," Emily said. "When I was 16, I started helping with the family business right after high school. John's father told Emily, 'I'm looking for someone more suitable for John. I could introduce him to someone else. You might have had a tough life, but you are not suitable for my son. He's our precious eldest son. Please leave.'" Despite John's efforts to defend Emily, his father wouldn't listen. Emily came home feeling sad, embarrassed, and disappointed. Not suitable, huh? I can't believe some parents still think like that in this day and age. I'm proud to be the daughter of a small packed lunch shop owner, but today I just feel shattered. The talk about status and everything made me cry. How can they judge you based on what little they hear? Emily said, tears in her eyes. John says he won't give up even if his father opposes. He wants to proceed with the wedding plans. We might end up eloping, you know. It sounds like a reverse Romeo and Juliet. It could be a tragic story. I told John not to push himself, but he said he couldn't imagine his life without me. He was serious enough to say he'd cut ties with his parents if that's what it took for us to be together. Whether that was the best decision for both of them was unclear. As her brother, I couldn't stand to see Emily cry. If anything bothers you, no matter how small, talk to me, I told her. Thanks, Robert. It must have been the first time Emily had ever been looked down upon, so it hurt her deeply. Tears welled up in her eyes again. John was very serious about marrying Emily. At home, Emily was writing wedding invitations by hand. She was steadily preparing for the wedding. It's their life after all, I thought, feeling like there was no room for me to intervene. Meanwhile, I was working on promoting the shop using a website and social media, even though I wasn't very familiar with computers and phones. Recently, I bought a food truck, had Emily write the chalkboard menus, and started attending local markets to spread the word about Smith's packed lunch. The wedding date was set. It was going to be a small ceremony with close family. Robert, I've managed to convince my parents. Please attend the wedding without worry. I trust you, John, but Emily still insists on working at the shop. That's included in our plans. Having her work will be helpful. Robert, you know the customers come to get their energy from me, and you will miss me, right? Emily was my only sister, my only family. As her brother, it was my duty to let her go, but I felt a bit lonely. Her promise to continue helping with the shop was my only solace. The wedding day arrived. Seeing Emily, who usually wore a cotton bandana, apron, and jeans, now with her hair beautifully done and wearing a wedding dress, I was amazed at how stunning she looked. Thinking about all the struggles we went through, I couldn't help but shed tears at her radiant appearance. Robert, why are you crying? It's too early for that. We're just getting started. Oh, it's just dust in my eye. Ouch. I should take some pictures. I took out my rarely used DSLR camera and captured Emily from various angles. I must have clicked the shutter about 50 times. These photos would be precious memories of our time together. Robert, you're such a kind person. Thank you for everything. Please continue to support me. In truth, those words of gratitude were likely meant for our late parents. Ever since I dropped out of college, I'd been a stand-in parent for Emily. I hoped I managed that role well enough. Overwhelmed by Emily's thanks, I turned away and cried. The ceremony proceeded as planned. The bride and groom sat at their seats, looking at us with a mix of shyness and happiness. It was time for the father of the groom's speech. Although John's father had initially opposed the marriage, John assured me he had convinced his father. Good day, everyone. I am Sam Thompson, the father of the groom, John. On this auspicious day, I thought as I watched the groom's father, I feel like I've seen that man somewhere before. He seemed accustomed to public speaking and was adept at holding the audience's attention. His speech was written on a long, vertically folded piece of paper, suggesting it would be lengthy. I expected it to be a heartfelt speech that would make the bride and groom happy. As I was saying, I run a food manufacturing company and plan to pass it on to my eldest son, John. He spoke about his company, how he had raised John with care, and his desire for John to inherit the business. This meant Emily's future would be secure. However, as the speech continued, it took a strange turn. I heard the bride's parents passed away early, and she's had a tough life as the daughter of a small packed lunch shop owner. In contrast, John graduated from graduate school and is set to become an elite. This is the very definition of disparity. Is this kind of misfortune acceptable? Frankly, both my wife and I wish this marriage never happened. We want it annulled immediately. The room began to buzz. The groom's father placed the letter on the bride and groom's table, as if to say, "Take this." A wedding speech that proposed breaking off the marriage. This wedding was orchestrated to humiliate us siblings. Emily was in tears, and John got furious at his father's selfishness, and stood up abruptly. I also stood up, seeing this, and signaled John to calm down. I took the father's letter and stepped up to the microphone. "What are you doing, young man? Why did you take my letter?" John's father said. "I'm next in line for the speech, so I took the liberty of coming up," I replied with a smile. The MC hurriedly introduced me. "I am Robert Smith, the bride Emily's brother." "Robert Smith? Who is this youngster?" John's father muttered, trying to recall. He looked at me, searching through his memory. "The groom's parents may oppose this marriage, but I support it. Though I may be just the son of a small packed lunch shop owner, my sister and I have shared many hardships together. We take great pride in the work we inherited from our late parents, and we always will." The room grew even more restless. I continued, "They say handwriting reflects the heart. Looking at this letter written by the groom's father, I see nothing but a regrettable and rude individual. Placing such a poorly written letter on the bride and groom's table is an insult to their special day." "What are you saying, you impertinent fool?" I said. "It's a mismatch," John's father shouted. "Do you know who I am?" "Mr. Thompson," I retorted firmly. "Ah, you're Robert Smith, the owner of Smith's Packed Lunch." Recognition dawned on his face. I usually wore an apron with a headscarf, but he finally matched the name with the person. "Regardless of what you say, even if this marriage seems like a modern-day Romeo and Juliet, I will support and watch over John and Emily as a brother and brother-in-law. Thank you for listening." The previously buzzing room fell silent and then erupted in applause. After the ceremony, John's father hurried over to me. "I didn't realize you were the owner of Smith's Packed Lunch. I sincerely apologize for my rudeness. I'm just the son of a packed lunch shop owner. I understand your point clearly." The father had once visited our shop with his executive, proposing to turn our popular fried chicken into a frozen food product and even expand into a chain of fried chicken specialty stores. It was a pivotal project for their company, and I had been on the verge of signing the contract, impressed by how much they valued my recipe. But after the way he humiliated my sister and me and embarrassed his own son at the wedding. "Your handwriting reveals your character." My mother's words were right. Handwriting reflects the heart. "Mr. Thompson, please consider the proposal null and void. It's impossible to work with you." "That's impossible. We've already finalized the package design and sent it to the printer. We've also contracted and renovated 6 stores. You acted too quickly. I haven't signed the contract. Moreover, this recipe is a treasured family secret, refined by me from my late parents' original. I'm not giving it away. You should look elsewhere. The Smith's Packed Lunch brand carries significant weight. Please reconsider." Suddenly, John interjected and cut into the conversation. "Dad, our relationship ends today as promised. I never expected such a betrayal. I'm cutting ties with you." "John, please reconsider. You're the only heir." John shouted with tears streaming down his face. "Who broke our promise first?" Thus, John ceased to be a son to his father. He took on our family name, becoming John Smith. After the tumultuous wedding, Emily and John moved into an apartment near the packed lunch shop. Emily's previously 0-minute commute turned into a 20-minute bike ride. Despite this, she continued to greet customers with her usual cheerful welcome and worked hard in both customer service and food preparation. Handwritten pop signs are now Emily's specialty. They are an indispensable promotional tool for Smith's Packed Lunch. John supported me on the business side, asking, "Robert, is there anything I can help with?" Cutting ties with his parents did not diminish John's exceptional marketing skills. He later established a digital marketing company. With no hair left, John's parents brought in a new president for their food manufacturing company from outside. However, as a chairman, Mr. Thompson was not good at delegating and quickly drove the new president out. He then took on the title of chairman and president himself, but his notorious reputation caused the company to shrink further. The cost of losing John was steep for Mr. Thompson. With John's help, I focused on product development. While creating hit products was challenging, Smith's Packed Lunch gained more recognition. The chicken curry John suggested was initially sold in local convenience stores and supermarkets, but now it can be reached nationwide through online sales. It was even featured in department store catalogs for holiday gifts. It felt like a small stone causing ripples in a pond, expanding slowly but surely. What our late parents built was now blossoming. One day, a woman came for an interview. She was a year older than me. I looked over the resume, and the handwriting on the resume was excellent. The handwriting was beautiful, reminiscent of my mother's. She expressed her love for our packed lunch and store interior. Her sincerity was evident. Emily vouched for her meticulous customer service and work ethic. Handwriting reflects the heart, I thought, captivated by her elegant handwriting. I proposed to this passionate woman. Now we have 2 children, making us a family of 4. Today, we're taking the food truck with our family and my sister's family to a gourmet food festival. The event is at a large park in New York. A large crowd is expected. We've refined our signature fried chicken for this day. I am confident that the future of Smith's packed lunch is bright.
Hello, I looked in my wallet and couldn't find my credit card. Do you know anything about it? Oh, you noticed already. I thought it might take you a bit longer, considering your age. Wait a minute. Are you saying you're the one who spent $50,000 without permission? That's outrageous. It's not as bad as it sounds. It was just for my wife's birthday. I borrowed the card to book a stay in an ultra-luxurious 5-star hotel suite. It costs about $110,000 a night, and we stayed for 5 nights. It was an amazing experience. I'm even thinking of going to another country next. See you later. Hold on a second. I haven't spoken to my son in 30 years. I raised my 2 boys on my own after divorcing my husband. My younger son has always been there for me, but my older son is a different story. Recently, he came to the house, took my credit card from my wallet, and spent $50,000 at a luxury hotel. His actions are both criminal and heartless. I supported him through everything, but now, I can't even think of him as my son. 2 minutes later, I made a decision and called his wife. Hello, my son is there, isn't he? I've contacted the card company and had the credit card stopped. I'm also planning to report the theft and unauthorized use to the police. After ending the call, I blocked their numbers. I can only imagine their panic and confusion now that the card is stopped. They were planning to travel to another country, so they likely don't have return tickets. They're going to face some serious trouble. A week later, they had no choice but to apologize. I'm a 65-year-old woman living alone in New York. Since divorcing my husband 30 years ago, I've raised my 2 sons by myself. I'm retired now and enjoying my leisure time. Mom, I bought your favorite donuts, my younger son said when he visited. Thank you, you didn't have to go out of your way, I replied. My younger son often visits even after moving out. He works for a company with good benefits and can get home on time. He's single, so he stays over if the next day is a day off. It's not that he hasn't become independent, he just worries about me living alone. I can manage on my own, but I appreciate his thoughtfulness. On the other hand, when my eldest son and his wife visit our family home, things never go well. I don't really welcome their visits. Hey, can you lend me some money? We have our wedding anniversary coming up next week, and we're planning a trip abroad. We need some extra funds, my eldest son asked. Why don't you use your own savings if you need money? I suggested. I can't save anything with my salary, he complained. You live in a nice new apartment and just bought a new car. Isn't that the result of your own choices? I pointed out. Please, I'll pay you back. Don't be so harsh, he pleaded. Ever since my eldest son started living on his own after graduating from high school, he's often borrowed money from me. After he got married, the amounts he asked for only increased, and I can't recall a single time when he actually repaid any of it. I don't want to lend money to someone who doesn't keep their promises, even if they're family. Shouldn't people honor their commitments? I didn't raise him to disregard such basic values, but he's grown into someone who relies too heavily on his parents' wallet. Fortunately, I received a substantial amount from my retirement fund and have been investing wisely, so I'm not struggling financially. However, I want to avoid unnecessary spending as I consider my future. Yet, as a mother, I find it hard to say no when my son is truly in need. I think I should be stricter, but every time he asks, I end up giving in. Then one day, my eldest son and his wife showed up unexpectedly. We need to talk, he said, his tone serious. I got into a car accident, and we need a substantial amount of money. We don't have much savings, but we've been told we'll be sued if we don't pay. A car accident. I was shocked. I've been working hard to repay a large debt to you, and I guess I was too tired, he explained. Hearing about the accident, I felt a mix of surprise and relief that they were both safe. Maybe my demands for repayment had stressed them out. While I wasn't directly to blame, I couldn't help but feel somewhat responsible. Up until now, they had asked for money for their own needs, but this situation was different. This was an emergency, and there seemed to be no other option. Okay, I'll prepare the money. How much do you need? I asked. $30,000, he replied. What? I was shocked at the enormous amount. $30,000? That seems like a ripoff, I thought, but I knew that damages and compensation could add up quickly. I didn't notice a single injury on my eldest son or his wife. It didn't seem like the accident was that serious. Perhaps the other party involved held a special position, but still, paying such a large sum didn't make sense. Why was it so expensive? The other person was driving a luxury car, and the repair costs are quite high, my son explained. But shouldn't insurance cover the repairs? I asked. We didn't have insurance, so we have to bear the full costs ourselves. We're in serious trouble if we can't pay this amount. Can you help us out? With that, my son and his wife bowed their heads to me, a gesture I'd never seen from them before. They must be truly desperate. I sighed. I guess I have no choice. We're family, after all, and I should help my family in trouble. Reluctantly, I agreed. Okay, I'll arrange the money, but make sure you pay me back. Yes, thank you. Of course we'll repay you, they promised. I prepared the money, considering it a loan. But after that, I heard nothing from my son or his wife. A week passed, and I started to wonder how the situation with the accident had been resolved. Then, when I went shopping for the first time in a while, I reached into my wallet to pay and realized 3 of my credit cards were missing. No way, I thought. I hadn't used this wallet recently, and I hadn't left it anywhere. There were no signs of a break-in at home, and the cash was still there. What was going on? As I panicked, I realized that I hadn't used my wallet or even left the house in the past week. When I hurriedly contacted the credit card company, I was shocked to learn that $50,000 had recently been spent. What's going on? I thought. The only visitors I'd had were my eldest son and his wife. Could they be involved? Feeling uneasy, I immediately called my eldest son. Hello, can you talk right now? I asked. Yeah, sure, Mom, but it's rare to get a call from you, he replied, sounding unusually cheerful. His tone made me wonder if he had been drinking, even though he should have been preoccupied with the accident. The thought that he might be drinking this early infuriated me. What was he thinking? Are you drinking by any chance? I asked, my irritation growing. No, it's not like that. What are you talking about? He responded, sounding defensive. Have you seen my credit cards? They're missing from my wallet, I pressed, hoping I was wrong. Oh, you noticed already? I thought it would take a bit longer for you to find out. I'm surprised you caught on so quickly, he said with a smug tone. What do you mean? I asked, dread washing over me as I began to realize what he was implying. Could it be that my eldest son and his wife had taken my credit cards without permission? It felt like theft, plain and simple. I didn't want to believe it, but after hearing what he said, I couldn't think of any other explanation. There had been no signs of a break-in, so they were the only suspects. But I never expected him to admit it so easily. I was too shocked to respond at first, but my son continued talking. We've just been using a bit of your money. Your credit card is really convenient. You know, we're on vacation for my wife's birthday, staying in a top-tier suite. The whole trip, including the hotel, is costing about $50,000. It's nice not having to worry about money. This couldn't be my son. Someone must be impersonating him over the phone. That's what I desperately wanted to believe. But deep down, I knew it was him, revealing a side of himself I had never seen in over 30 years. Betrayed by my own family, my heart broke, and I was at a loss for words. Why would he do this to me? Was he really my son? Oblivious to my feelings, he seemed to be enjoying himself. You think it's okay to use someone else's credit card without permission? Don't you know the difference between right and wrong? And you haven't even repaid the money from the accident. Why? No report, no repayment, and now you're stealing my cards. It's just unbelievable. The words burst out of me in a wave of emotion. I just wanted him to apologize. One simple word, and maybe I could find it in me to forgive him. But instead of the apology I longed for, I heard his wife's voice on the other end. Mom, you've saved up quite a bit of money, right? So it shouldn't be a problem if we use a little. Money is meant to be spent, not just saved. That's right, my son chimed in. I'm really lucky to have such a smart wife. We're going to enjoy ourselves, so don't contact us anymore. With that, he hung up the phone. A clever daughter-in-law? What does this all mean? Could it be that she's the mastermind behind all of this, manipulating my son? The thought shifted my perspective slightly. But regardless of who initiated it, this was a crime. Using a credit card without permission, even among family, is theft. What were they thinking? Anger surged within me, and it took time to regain my composure. But at least now I had a clear grasp of the situation. I had a plan in mind. After hanging up the phone, I waited about 2 minutes before calling again. This time, my eldest son's wife answered. Hello? Do you need something? I told you we're on vacation. You shouldn't be contacting us. This call is a courtesy, I replied calmly. Her dismissive tone didn't faze me. A courtesy? What are you talking about? She asked, sounding slightly annoyed. I've notified the credit card company about the unauthorized use and had the card stopped. Don't be surprised when it stops working. I informed her, letting my words sink in. You did what? How are we supposed to pay for things now? She demanded, her voice rising in panic. Lending and borrowing credit cards is not allowed, and this is clearly unauthorized use. Did you really think I would just overlook it? That's incredibly naive. What do you mean you stopped the card? We need it. We don't even have tickets for the return flight. Call the credit card company right now and get it reinstated, or we'll be in serious trouble, she insisted, her tone turning desperate. If they truly needed help, they could have asked for it humbly like they did during the last incident. But after seeing their true colors, it was clear that any expectation of decency was futile. I wasn't angry anymore, just astonished by their audacity. I ended the call and immediately blocked their number, along with any messages. I had no desire to speak to them again or even see their faces. No matter how much they begged, I couldn't bring myself to help them this time. Then I contacted my younger son. I warned him, they might cause you some trouble. A week later, my younger son called. Mom, it's about my older brother. I've decided to pay the money for now, so they'll be coming back soon. But I'm worried they might hold a grudge against you. Don't worry, I reassured him. I'll handle it if they come. I knew my eldest son and his wife were likely to blame me, completely ignoring their own actions, but I was ready for whatever came next. I felt guilty about involving my younger son, but I was determined to be even stricter when they returned. With this resolve, I waited for them to come home. The next day, as I had expected, they showed up. Mom, why did you do this? Do you realize how much trouble we were in, stranded abroad without a single acquaintance? Have you ever considered how desperate we felt? They began yelling at me the moment they walked through the door. How foolish, I thought. It became clear to me once again that only fools try to win arguments by raising their voices. If they had just explained their situation logically, maybe I could have understood. But they showed no intention of apologizing. You always just shout like barking dogs. But honestly, I never expected anything different from you, I said calmly. You have two choices. Either call the police yourself or repay the full amount right now. What? Police? What are you talking about? Don't joke with me. You're the one who stopped the credit card and left us in that mess. Shouldn't you be taking responsibility for that? I couldn't help but wonder what kind of upbringing leads to such a lack of understanding. In over 60 years of life, I never thought I'd encounter people like this, but I was serious. Do you realize that using someone else's card without their permission is considered fraud against the credit card company? Even if we're family, sharing cards is not allowed. Reporting this to the police will only cause trouble for you. Wouldn't you rather just repay the full amount? You should be thankful I haven't reported you yet. But we don't have the money right now, you know that, they protested. Oh, and about that story you told me about the traffic accident. I already know it was a lie. I want that money back too. Their reaction was priceless, eyes wide and mouths agape in shock. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. If they thought I was clueless, they were sorely mistaken. Why are you bringing up the traffic accident now? They stammered, clearly taken aback. Because after what you did with the credit card, it's time you stopped underestimating me, I replied, unwavering. I immediately spoke with my second son. He mentioned how your lifestyle had recently improved and also confirmed that there hadn't been any accidents. Since he lives nearby, he quickly checked and confirmed that the car was perfectly fine. It turns out the whole story was a lie. While it might be difficult to sue my own son, your wife isn't my family, so I can pursue fraud charges against her. Upon hearing this, my eldest son's wife became visibly agitated, avoiding eye contact as if she finally realized the gravity of her actions. But it was too late. What shocked me the most was that there was still no apology from either of them. They just sat there in silence, not uttering a single word of regret. I was amazed at their complete lack of common sense. Anyway, I'm demanding full repayment of the money, I continued. If that's impossible, I won't hesitate to report you to the police. I'll also make arrangements to ensure my savings aren't inherited by you and use this as an opportunity to sever ties. Wait a minute, we're family. Isn't that a bit harsh? They protested. You're adults now, so such childish excuses won't fly, I replied coldly. If I report this to the police, you'll learn about the harshness of reality. Their feeble excuses only infuriated me more. All I wanted was estrangement and repayment of the money. After making this clear, I drove them out of my house. They tried contacting me several times afterward, even coming to the house to apologize, but I was no longer willing to listen. I contacted a lawyer and began the repayment process. Eventually, my eldest son and his wife seemed to come to their senses and promised to repay the money. We're truly sorry and promise to repay the money, but it's difficult to pay $55,000 in one go. Could we perhaps arrange installment payments? There's always the option of taking out a loan, I responded sharply. If you sell the car and get rid of your expensive branded items, you can quickly raise the money. Don't make me angrier. Of course, I had no intention of accepting installment payments, and how they borrowed money was none of my concern. They repeatedly requested installment plans through the lawyer, but I refused. Reluctantly, my son and his wife took out personal loans and for the remaining amount, resorted to loan sharks. They ended up losing almost all their possessions except the car, and his wife had to start working to cover the monthly interest payments. The couple, once living lavishly, was now being tormented by the very money they had once squandered. I don't know how long this situation will last, but it's the result of their own actions. It's too late for regrets. They must live with the consequences of their choices. As for me, I'm living happily, even if alone. Life isn't just about money, it's important to live without being misled by it.
The sound of Jessica's designer heels clicking against the marble floor echoed through the hallway of Morgan Industries headquarters. I kept my eyes focused on my computer screen, pretending to be absorbed in spreadsheets as she approached my desk, what used to be my office before she demoted me to executive assistant. Olivia, where are the Q3 projections? She demanded, not bothering with a greeting. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. I reached for a perfectly organized folder on my desk. Right here. I've also included the updated market analysis you asked for, plus the preliminary numbers from our Asian division. She snatched the folder without a word of thanks, flipping through it with manicured fingers. At 32, Jessica Morgenstern was everything I wasn't: tall, polished, and married to one of the most influential tech investors in Silicon Valley. The fact that she was my stepsister seemed almost irrelevant now. These better be accurate, she muttered. Unlike last time, I bit back a retort. Last time had been her error, not mine, but there was no point arguing. Not anymore. My name is Olivia Morgan, and until 6 months ago, I was the chief operating officer of Morgan Industries, the technology consulting firm my father had built from nothing. I'd worked my way up from intern to COO over 12 years, learning every aspect of the business while earning my MBA at night, but none of that mattered after Dad's stroke. Jessica had swooped in with her husband James's connections and her mother's influence over our father. Suddenly, the succession plan that had been in place for years disappeared. Instead of me taking over as CEO, the board appointed Jessica, despite her having spent the last decade working in fashion marketing. Oh, and cancel my lunch with the Riverside team, Jessica added, already turning away. I have a more important meeting. They've flown in from London specifically to meet with you. I reminded her. The acquisition dash. I said cancel it. Her voice could have frozen hell itself. And remember your place, Olivia. You're not COO anymore. You're just the help. As she clicked away down the hall, I allowed myself a small smile. Jessica was so convinced of her own superiority that she never bothered to look closely at what I was actually doing with all those spreadsheets and reports. She had no idea that for the past year, ever since I first noticed her maneuvering for control, I'd been preparing for this exact situation. Later that evening, I sat in my small home office, surrounded by documents that told a very different story than the one Jessica thought she knew. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus Zhang, our former head of Asia-Pacific operations, who'd retired shortly after Jessica took over. Everything's ready. Tokyo team is on board.
I sent back a thumbs up emoji, then opened my laptop to check the secure email account I'd set up months ago. One by one, confirmation messages rolled in from key personnel across Morgan Industries' global offices, people Jessica had dismissed as irrelevant, middle managers she never bothered to meet. People who had watched me grow up in this company, who remembered how I'd started in the mailroom during summer breaks, people who'd seen me work alongside them, learning their challenges, understanding their value. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I quickly closed the laptop before calling out, "Come in." It was David Chin, Jessica's husband James's younger brother, and ironically, one of my closest allies. "Rough day?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Unlike his brother and sister-in-law, David had earned everything he had through hard work and genuine talent. I shrugged. "The usual. Your sister-in-law continues to excel at alienating our most important clients. She canceled the Riverside meeting? How did you know?" David smiled grimly. "Because she scheduled lunch with Patterson Holdings instead. James arranged it. They're planning to push through some major restructuring." My heart skipped a beat. Patterson Holdings was known for aggressive cost-cutting and outsourcing. If they were involved. How soon? 2 weeks. They're going to announce a strategic partnership that will effectively give Patterson control of Morgan's domestic operations. David leaned forward, his expression serious. "A lot of people are going to lose their jobs, Olivia." I nodded slowly, my mind racing. "Then we need to move faster. Is everything set on your end?" David had been helping me set up Aurora Consulting, officially a small startup focusing on specialized tech consulting, but actually the vehicle for something much bigger. "The infrastructure is ready," he confirmed. "We can go live whenever you give the word. But are you sure about this? Once we start, we can't go back." I finished. "I know, but Jessica and James have left us no choice. They're going to destroy everything my father built, all in the name of short-term profits." I opened my laptop again, showing him the messages I'd received. "We're not the only ones who see it coming. The question is, are you really willing to go against your own brother?" David's face hardened. James stopped being my brother the moment he decided to use Morgan Industries as his personal piggy bank. "I'm with you all the way." The next morning, I arrived at work early, just like always. Jessica might have demoted me, but she still relied on me to keep things running smoothly, which meant I had access to everything: client contacts, project details, internal communications. I was reviewing the morning reports when my phone buzzed. It was Marcus again. "Singapore office is secure, regional directors all confirmed." Another piece falling into place. While Jessica had been focused on impressing the board with surface-level changes, I'd spent the past year quietly building relationships with our international teams. They'd watched in dismay as she dismantled the company culture Dad had created, replacing experience with cronies and cost-cutting measures. Now they were ready to jump ship, but not to Patterson Holdings. The next week passed in a blur of careful preparation. During the day, I played the perfect assistant, managing Jessica's schedule and handling the endless details she couldn't be bothered with. At night, I coordinated with David and our growing network of allies. The plan was complex but elegant. Morgan Industries' strength had always been its people, the relationships we'd built, the expertise we'd developed. Jessica saw them as expenses to be cut. I saw them as the foundation of something new. It all came to a head sooner than we expected. Jessica burst into the office one morning, her face flushed with anger. "Where's the Singapore team's proposal for the Chintech merger? I need it for the board meeting this afternoon." I blinked innocently. "I sent it to your email last night. Didn't you receive it?" She grabbed my keyboard, pulling up her email. "There's nothing here. This is exactly why I demoted you. You can't handle basic tasks." "That's strange," I said calmly, opening my own email. "I have the confirmation receipt right here. See? Sent at 9:47 p.m. to your private email address." Jessica's face went pale. She'd been using a private email account to communicate with Patterson Holdings, keeping the negotiations off Morgan's servers. She'd never told me about it, but I'd known for months. "How did you?" "Oh, that reminds me," I continued, still in my helpful assistant voice. "Marcus Zhang asked me to give you a message." "Marcus? He retired months ago." I smiled. "Actually, he didn't. He's been quite busy setting up Aurora Consulting's Asia-Pacific headquarters, along with most of our senior team in Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul." The blood drained from Jessica's face as understanding dawned. "What have you done?" "Me? I'm just the help, remember? I just handle the paperwork. Like the resignation letters from our entire international management team, which should be hitting the board's inboxes right about." Her phone buzzed, then again, and again. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already have." I stood up, gathering my things. Oh, and you might want to take a look at the client list for the Patterson Holdings deal. You'll find it's gotten significantly shorter over the past few weeks. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard her screaming for security, but it was too late. The pieces I'd spent a year putting into place were already moving. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the hard part. The next morning, Morgan Industries headquarters was in chaos. Security guards stood at every entrance, checking IDs against a hastily compiled list of approved employees. Jessica had spent the night trying to contain the damage, but she was fighting a battle that had already been lost. I watched it unfold from Aurora Consulting's new offices, a modern workspace in a building just 3 blocks away. David had secured the lease months ago, and we'd been quietly setting up infrastructure while Jessica was focused on her Patterson Holdings deal. Latest count? I asked as Marcus Zhang walked into my office, looking tired but satisfied. 87% of our international staff have confirmed their transitions to Aurora, he reported. The rest will probably follow once they see we're operational. But that's not the biggest news. He handed me his tablet, showing an email chain. The Riverside team? After Jessica cancelled their meeting, they reached out to their contacts in our London office. They want to talk to us instead. I smiled, remembering Jessica's dismissal of that unimportant meeting. Set it up, and make sure David is there. His technical expertise will be crucial. The phone on my desk buzzed. My assistant's voice came through the speaker. Your father is here. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't seen Dad since his stroke 6 months ago. Jessica and her mother had made sure of that, controlling his visitors and protecting him from stress. Send him in. He looked older than I remembered, leaning more heavily on his cane, but his eyes were sharp as ever as he took in my new office. Nice view, he said mildly. Dad, I dash. He held up a hand, stopping me. Jessica came to see me last night. She had quite a story to tell about betrayal and corporate espionage. I stayed silent, waiting. She seemed to think you'd stolen the company's international division right out from under her. He settled into the chair across from my desk. What she failed to mention was how you did it. Everything was legal, I said carefully. The employees who left chose to do so voluntarily. The clients who followed were free to take their business wherever they wanted. Oh, I know that. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. What I want to know is how long you've been planning this. I took a deep breath. Since the day I found Jessica's mother altering your succession plans while you were still in the hospital. His expression darkened. I wondered about that. I saw what was coming, Dad. I knew once they got control, they'd start dismantling everything you built. The Patterson Holdings deal was just the beginning. Patterson Holdings? He sat up straighter. Charles Patterson's Vulture Fund? I nodded, pulling up the details on my laptop. Jessica and James arranged to sell them controlling interest in Morgan's domestic operations. They were planning to gut the company, layoffs, outsourcing, selling off divisions for quick profits. Dad was silent for a long moment, studying the documents. Finally, he looked up at me with something like pride in his eyes. So instead of fighting them directly, you built a lifeboat, preserved the most valuable parts of the company, the people, the relationships, the expertise, just moved it all somewhere new. I learned from the best, I said softly. You always told me the real value of a business isn't in its assets or contracts, it's in its people. He reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. You did good, kid. Now, tell me about this Aurora Consulting. I might know some people who'd be interested in working with a company like that. Over the next few weeks, the full impact of what we'd done became clear. Without its international teams and key technical staff, Morgan Industries couldn't deliver on many of its existing contracts. The Patterson Holdings deal fell apart when they realized how much value had evaporated overnight. Jessica was furious. Of course, she tried everything: lawsuits, smear campaigns, even attempted to freeze Dad out of the company completely. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. Dad might have stepped down as CEO, but he still controlled a significant portion of voting shares. And he wasn't happy about the Patterson Holdings deal. The board meeting that followed was brutal. Dad walked in supported by his cane and 3 different attorneys. By the time he walked out, Jessica had been removed as CEO, and James's board seat was under review for conflict of interest. I wasn't there. I was too busy in a video conference with our new Tokyo office, working out details for a major contract, but David recorded the whole thing on his phone. You should have seen her face, he told me later, when Dad started listing all the ways she'd violated her fiduciary duties. It was beautiful. But the real satisfaction came 2 months later, when the dust had settled. Aurora Consulting had not only survived its dramatic birth, it was thriving. Our small startup had offices in 6 countries, a client list that included some of the biggest names in tech, and a corporate culture that put people first. Morgan Industries, meanwhile, was struggling to rebuild. The board appointed an interim CEO and began the long process of damage control. They even approached me about returning, offering my old position and more. I declined politely. That chapter of my life was closed. Then came the day Jessica showed up at my office. She looked different, the designer outfit was the same, but something in her bearing had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been humility. "You won," she said without preamble. "Congratulations." I gestured for her to sit. This wasn't about winning, Jessica. It was about protecting what Dad built, the real heart of it, not just the name and the buildings. By stealing it all away? There was a hint of her old bitterness. By giving people a choice, I corrected. They chose to leave because you and James showed them exactly what you thought of them, that they were just expenses to be cut, obstacles to your grand plans. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the view of the city. James left. You know, when the Patterson deal fell apart, he moved on to his next target. Apparently, I'm not useful to him anymore. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. I'm sorry. No, you're not. But there was no heat in her words. You saw who he really was long before I did. Just like you saw what we were going to do to the company. So what will you do now? She turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw something real in her expression. I don't know. Everything I thought I wanted, it all turned out to be hollow. I considered her for a moment. You know, we're expanding our marketing division. Someone with your experience in fashion and luxury brands could be valuable. She stared at me. You're offering me a job? After everything? I'm offering you a chance to earn something on your own merits. No shortcuts. No political games. Just honest work with a team that values real contribution. Why would you do that? I thought about Dad. About all the lessons he'd taught me about business and life. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about showing them a better way. Jessica left without accepting the offer. But I knew she'd be back. She had seen what we were building at Aurora, something based on trust, expertise, and mutual respect. Something worth being part of. A year later, Aurora Consulting had become one of the fastest-growing tech consulting firms in the industry. We maintained our core values even as we expanded, never forgetting the lessons that had led to our creation. Jessica did eventually join us, starting in a junior position and working her way up honestly for the first time in her life. She turned out to have real talent when she stopped looking for shortcuts. Dad divided his time between advisory roles at both companies, helping Morgan Industries rebuild while supporting Aurora's growth. He never said "I told you so" about Jessica and James, but the pride in his eyes when he looked at what we'd built at Aurora said everything. As for me, I kept the nameplate from my old executive assistant desk. It sits in my office at Aurora, a reminder that sometimes the best view of what's really happening comes from the place where everyone underestimates you. Because in the end, Jessica had been right about one thing: I was just the help. I had helped build something new from the ashes of her destruction. I had helped save jobs and preserve relationships that took years to build. I had helped create a company that reflected the values I believed in. And sometimes, that's the best revenge of all.
On the day we were set to embark on our honeymoon, I was blindsided when Daniel handed me divorce papers instead. He announced, with a chilling detachment, that he was taking his entire family on what was supposed to be our trip. Coldly, he added, "If you have a problem with it, we can just go our separate ways." Internally, I was fuming, but I kept my composure and calmly responded, "Fine, but don't forget, I'm still my own person." His shocked expression gave me a fleeting sense of victory. My name is Samantha. I'm 37 years old, and I work in real estate, a career I genuinely love and find fulfilling. I'm fortunate to have supportive colleagues, but despite my professional success, my personal life feels stagnant. I don't have any hobbies, and I've never had a boyfriend before Daniel. A growing concern had been weighing on me as I watched most of my friends marry in their 30s. I was one of the few still single, and it didn't help that my younger colleagues were progressively leaving the company, which left me with a pang of loneliness. Then, through a mutual friend, I met Daniel. He was 3 years younger than me, with a comforting smile that immediately drew me in. He didn't talk much. He preferred to listen, but he always made sure my opinions were valued whenever decisions had to be made. Having no prior experience in relationships, I quickly grew attached to him. As our relationship evolved, I brought up the idea of marriage, and Daniel agreed without hesitation. Marriage is a huge commitment, It's planning a wedding, a honeymoon, building a new home together. I was eager for us to make these decisions jointly, but Daniel always deferred to me, never sharing his preferences. Over time, this made him feel distant, less reliable. My dissatisfaction with him began to grow, especially when his mother came into the picture. Daniel's mother was nothing like him. Where he was easygoing, she was overbearing, rarely considering my views and often imposing her own. Samantha, once you're married, you'll quit your job and focus on the home, right? You're not getting any younger. If you wait too long, you'll have trouble having kids, she remarked during one of our first meetings. Daniel is working hard, so as a woman, you should concentrate on the family. It's a wife's duty to support her husband. She adhered to such outdated beliefs. Ironically, I earned more than Daniel, something he didn't mind but had mentioned to his parents. His mother, however, looked down on this. A woman who earns more than a man isn't charming. Can you even manage household chores? A wife should cook, do laundry, clean, and take care of her husband's health. Can you do that? She challenged, clearly underestimating me. Contrary to her assumptions, I had been living independently for years, managing all my household tasks without any issue. I had no intention of quitting my job after marriage either. I wanted to maintain a balance between my personal and professional life, but whenever his mother criticized me, Daniel remained silent. He didn't defend me, just nodded along with her. This planted seeds of doubt about his ability to stand up for me or be a reliable partner. His lack of support left me feeling uneasy about our future. I questioned whether I could truly rely on him when it mattered. Despite him being younger, I had hoped he might grow into a more dependable partner with time. But a part of me feared that if this marriage didn't work, I might never get married at all. My mind was in constant turmoil, torn between anxiety and longing, all while time moved forward without mercy. As the wedding preparations continued, from selecting a honeymoon destination to figuring out time off from work, my to-do list only grew, adding to my mounting unease. It was as if the more I tried to move forward, the heavier the weight of everything became. One day, I decided to discuss our plans with Daniel. Considering our busy work schedules, I brought up the idea of timing our honeymoon carefully. This might be our only chance to take a long vacation. Should we plan the honeymoon during this time? I asked. Yeah, that sounds good to me, Daniel replied without much thought. It seemed like a rare opportunity, as both of us would be free from work simultaneously. However, the wedding venue I had always dreamed of was so popular that it was fully booked for over a year. Faced with this dilemma, I proposed an unconventional solution. What do you think about having the honeymoon before the wedding? I suggested. I looked into it, and some couples do that. If we wait to have the wedding first, it could be another 3 years before we can go on this trip. If you're okay with it, Samantha, then I'm fine with it too, Daniel said without hesitation. His easy agreement gave me a sense of relief, but it also left me feeling conflicted. While part of me appreciated the lack of opposition, I wished he would share his own thoughts more often. His constant acceptance of my ideas felt bittersweet, as if he wasn't really invested. Still, I was glad that we could move forward without any disagreements, so I pressed ahead with planning our honeymoon and wedding. After much consideration, we settled on Europe as our destination. I had been torn between Florida and Europe right up until the last minute. Florida was closer, but I figured we could visit it any time. The allure of Italy and Spain was too strong to resist. I was eager to wander through their beautiful streets, savor delicious food, and indulge in shopping for stylish accessories and unique tableware to celebrate the start of our new life together. Once our schedules and destinations were aligned, I finalized all the arrangements about a month before our departure. By that time, my excitement was at its peak. This would be my first overseas trip, and I was buzzing with enthusiasm, my mind filled with thoughts of Europe. From buying travel essentials to planning our activities, I was entirely consumed by the thrill of what lay ahead. In the midst of all this excitement, any lingering frustrations I had with Daniel seemed to fade away. Everything was falling into place, until just a week before our honeymoon, Daniel brought up something unexpected. It was rare for him to make any requests, so I was immediately intrigued, wondering if it might have something to do with our trip. Maybe he had found a specific place he wanted to visit in Paris. Filled with curiosity, I waited for him to speak. I asked him, "What's on your mind, Daniel?" Quite innocently, he made his request. "I want to visit Finch Melody Auditorium while we're in Paris. Mom wants to go there." I was taken aback. "Your mother? Wait, what do you mean?" I stammered, struggling to process this sudden change in our plans. To Daniel, it seemed like an obvious addition. Well, since everyone else is going, he explained as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt a wave of disbelief as I grappled with the realization that my honeymoon was being turned into a family vacation. We'll all be together during the trip, right? Daniel said casually, as if this bombshell wasn't shattering everything I had envisioned. What do you mean by everyone? I asked, confused. It's our honeymoon. It should just be the two of us. Daniel remained unfazed. My mom thinks it's normal for the whole family to come along. I was floored. Daniel, I only made reservations for two. Just you and me. The booking deadline was a week ago. Today's the last day to confirm our plans, and I've only registered us, I said, trying to keep my composure. It might still be possible for the whole family to join. If you talk to the travel agency, it might sort something out, Daniel suggested, his optimism almost infuriating. Before I could respond, the intercom buzzed. On the screen, I saw my in-laws standing outside with several bags. Without waiting for an invitation, they barged into the house. My mother-in-law's eyes gleamed with excitement as she announced, I thought I'd drop off the luggage here since we're leaving soon. I'm so excited. Daniel quickly took control of the situation, ignoring my mounting frustration. Just leave the luggage here, he said, leading them into the room as if this was completely normal. Wait a minute, I interjected, desperately trying to halt the chaos, but my mother-in-law shot me a sharp look. What's the matter, Samantha? I hope you're not saying you don't want us all to go together now, she challenged, her tone condescending. I never agreed to this in the first place, I retorted, my voice firm. She dismissed me with a wave of her hand. You heard her, she just said no, she stated, as if my objections were of no consequence. Then turning to Daniel, she coaxed him further. But you always thought we would go together, right? Yeah, Daniel replied simply, supporting his mother's assumption without hesitation. My mother-in-law seized on his agreement, her smug smile growing. It's completely normal for the husband's parents to go on the honeymoon. Don't you have any common sense? Her words left me questioning everything, not just the trip, but the very foundation of my relationship with Daniel. As the tension escalated, she attempted to smooth things over with a troubling statement that only deepened my doubts. I hope you won't ruin the trip with any unpleasantness. It's a special honeymoon, after all. And we all want to make good memories, right? My mother-in-law said, her voice dripping with condescension. I'll make sure to teach you some common sense this week before we leave. She spoke as if it were a given that she and the rest of the family would be joining us. I felt my frustration boiling over. This is a honeymoon, you know. Normally, it's just the husband and wife, I countered. Refusing to back down, I knew that if I gave in to her demands now, it would set a terrible precedent for our future. I was determined not to let that happen. But she remained unyielding, dismissing my concerns outright. The husband's parents joining the honeymoon is just common sense. I can't believe you don't want to be with us. I thought we were becoming a family, but it seems our ideas of common sense are different. You don't seem to like me, and nothing seems to match. How sad, she lamented with exaggerated disappointment, her tone tinged with insincerity. Her furrowed brows and words, how sad, seemed laced with a hidden smirk, convincing me she was deliberately manipulating the situation. To my dismay, Daniel sided with her without hesitation. Samantha, what's wrong with you? They're my parents. It's okay for them to come on the honeymoon, right? It's not possible, I declared firmly, my patience wearing thin. We've already booked reservations for two. Plus, I've never heard of families joining the honeymoon trip. Daniel's response was heated, as if itching for a confrontation. I never realized you disliked my parents so much, Samantha, he exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief. Then, coldly dismissing the conversation, he added, That's enough. Just leave for today, his gaze piercing, as if he couldn't fathom my stance. As his words hung in the air, a sly smile spread across my mother-in-law's face. I stood there, bewildered and hurt, wondering why Daniel always sided with her, especially in such a crucial moment. The door slammed shut behind me, and in that fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of her smug expression, a look that celebrated her victory. Alone, standing outside, I felt utterly abandoned. My heart ached as I wondered how I had been painted as the villain in this scenario, why this special trip, meant to be ours, was now on the verge of being ruined. Overwhelmed by frustration and sadness, tears began to stream down my face. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. I want you to check if it's still possible for my parents to join the tour. If not, we'll cancel this trip and find one that all of us can go on. Please think rationally and reconsider. We can sort this out if you do. His words stung, devoid of any acknowledgement of my feelings. Instead, there was only a cold insistence on his version of rationality. He didn't contact me again after that message, and as time passed, the distance between us only grew wider. I could sense that Daniel was likely just as upset as I was, though he hid it well. The day of our supposed honeymoon finally arrived, and despite everything, I had no intention of enjoying it. But after a month of preparations, I couldn't just walk away. As I was getting ready, the intercom buzzed. It was Daniel, here to pick me up. We hadn't seen each other since that heated argument, and I wasn't sure how to act around him. His arrival suggested he still intended to go on the trip, but there was something off. He had no luggage with him. Instead, he was holding a set of divorce papers in his hand. You still plan to go on this trip after hurting my parents, didn't you? He accused, his voice heavy with disappointment. I'm taking my whole family on this honeymoon. If you don't like it, let's get a divorce. His words hit me like a brick, cold, final, and with no room for compromise. It was clear that in Daniel's eyes, his familial ties outweighed our relationship, and his mother's influence was the deciding factor. I stood there, caught between heartbreak and disbelief, realizing my marriage was ending before it had even begun. Daniel thrust the divorce papers toward me, his tone chilling. My mom said it would be better this way. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I had always thought Daniel would listen to me, value my feelings, and show me kindness. But now I saw him for what he was, someone who lacked conviction and placed his family's desires above our relationship. My feelings for him cooled sharply as I grasped the reality of our situation. Marrying him seemed pointless, especially with his overbearing mother in the picture. The future I saw with them was one filled with endless compromises and constant interference. Determined, I pointed at the divorce papers he held and responded with a decisiveness that took him aback. Sure, I said, my voice unwavering, but remember, I'm still single. Single? What do you mean? Daniel looked genuinely confused, his earlier composure slipping. Weren't you listening? We talked about delaying the marriage registration until the day of the ceremony. I made sure to get your agreement. You didn't forget, did you? The marriage certificate is still in the drawer. You even said, if you're fine with it, Samantha, then I'm fine too. That's right, divorce or not, we're not even married yet, so there's no problem with me going on the honeymoon under my maiden name. For a brief moment, Daniel's face flickered with recognition before turning crimson with frustration. Are you out of your mind? You're giving up on marriage just because of a honeymoon. Get a grip, he exclaimed, his tone rising. Matching his intensity, I responded firmly, no, Daniel. I'm giving up on you because you've already made it clear where your priorities lie. I stood my ground, unwavering. This is the result of me being rational, I said firmly. You've shown where your priorities lie, and I have to protect my interests and well-being. This wasn't just about a trip, it was about standing up for myself and my autonomy in a relationship that was turning into a web of conditional terms and unreasonable expectations. I realized that I had been so eager to get married that I lost sight of the reality I was stepping into. I can be happy with someone who doesn't respect my opinions or support me, I continued, my voice steady. I'd rather stay single for life. Thanks for helping me see that haste truly does make waste. Daniel's expression softened as his voice wavered. Samantha, let's calm down and start over, okay? He pleaded, his eyes almost brimming with tears. But I wasn't swayed. My resolve had solidified. I was determined to break free. In a moment of clarity, I raised my voice. If you're so desperate for a family trip, why don't you go with your family of 3? This time, plan it all yourself from the reservations to the itinerary. After always relying on others, it's about time you understand how difficult it is. If you think you can handle it, go ahead. Take the reins, you indecisive man. Without hesitation, I pulled out the unsigned marriage certificate from the drawer and tore it into shreds right in front of him. His mouth fell open in shock, his face a mix of disbelief and panic. Do you understand how serious I am now? I asked, my voice unwavering. I refuse to have a future dictated by others. It's over between us. Go cry to your beloved mommy, you mama's boy. I turned and slammed the front door behind me, leaving the stunned Daniel in the silence of his own making. I could almost picture him running to his mother, seeking comfort and validation. That evening, I contacted the tour company to cancel our honeymoon reservations. Even though it was a last-minute cancellation and I faced a financial loss, the sense of liberation, knowing I had made a decision for my well-being, was worth every penny. Afterward, I decided to bill Daniel for the entire cost of the trip. It was his actions, after all, that led to this fiasco. It only seemed fair. Later, Daniel tried to shift the blame for our failed relationship onto me, spreading rumors among our friends and coworkers. But his attempts backfired. Among our circle, he quickly earned a reputation as a mama's boy, a label that stuck thanks to his past behavior. His bid for sympathy didn't gain him much favor. When I told my parents about the divorce, they were initially surprised but quickly supportive. Marriage isn't the only path to happiness, they reminded me. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. Their words were a great comfort during such a turbulent time. On a brighter note, this ordeal reignited my passion for travel. Instead of letting the honeymoon go to waste, I decided to take my first solo trip. Traveling alone to overseas destinations was daunting at first, but it turned out to be incredibly fulfilling. I visited historic cities I had always dreamed of, and to my surprise, I found that I enjoyed the solitude. These solo adventures opened up a new realm of freedom and discovery for me. I began to love traveling on my terms, and now, I'm eagerly planning my next trip abroad. This new chapter of my life is one where I'm no longer defined by marriage or controlled by others' expectations. Instead, I'm embracing a life of exploration, of the world, and of myself.
Hi, I'm Sharon and I'm 26 years old. When you reach this age, things start happening around you, just like they did for me. I was about to marry the most amazing man I had ever met. Craig was everything I ever wanted and more. We met on a boating trip. I was with some friends, and he was there for a business meeting in Maryland. I wouldn't call it love at first sight because it wasn't. In fact, during our relationship, we went through many phases before realizing we were meant for each other. My family adores Craig. My mom and dad treat him like their own son, and even the family dog gets more excited to see him than me. I met Craig's mom, Mayla, and his dad, Kevin, a few months after we decided to get married, and we all instantly got along. Mayla is the sweetest lady and reminds me of my mom, while Kevin is laid back and always making jokes. They're not always funny, but we laugh anyway. I was in love with Craig and his family, but this was before I met Natasha, Craig's older sister. One day during a family lunch, Mila mentioned Natasha. So, your sister's coming to town next week. Are you two going to pick her up at the airport? I think this is a good time to introduce your fiancé to the other woman who helped raise you. Craig laughed while eating some toast. Pulling my hair, eating half my food, and taking my toys, that's what I call raising me, Mom. The whole table laughed as we enjoyed our meal. After meeting Kevin, I started to see how Craig had picked up his dad's humor. Both of them could crack a good joke every now and then. I thought, well, now I have to wait a week until Craig says something really funny. Hey, it's all part of having a sibling, right? Speaking of which, Sharon, you have one. A sibling, I mean? Oh no, I'm an only child. I did have a few dogs and cats growing up, though. Does that count? Of course. My kids scratched and screamed at each other growing up, so I'd say our experiences were the same, Kevin joked, and we all giggled. I felt so at ease around Craig's family, it was almost too comfortable, but thanks to Natasha, things were about to change. Natasha had moved to New York after college. Craig told me his sister could be a bit overprotective, but he said I shouldn't worry. He expected us to get along just as well as I had with the rest of the family. Craig is half Hungarian on his mom's side, but while he hadn't picked up much of the culture Natasha had, the family would try not to speak Hungarian around me because they knew I wouldn't understand, but what they didn't know is that I'm a linguist. While that doesn't mean I can learn languages instantly, it does help. Craig had taught me a few phrases, and I took the initiative to learn more on my own. There are so many websites to help with that these days, so now I can use Hungarian conversationally, though I plan to wait until I was more confident. When are you two getting married? Natasha asked in Hungarian as soon as we were in the car. Seriously, you just met her 5 minutes ago, and she's sitting right next to me. You already forgot her name? Come on, just tell me already. I'm not going to ask her. I could only understand bits and pieces of the conversation. Nadish's accent was different from Layla's, probably because she was raised here. Sharon, Nadish is asking about the wedding. She wants to know the date so she can make arrangements at work. Oh, of course. We don't have a fixed date yet, but it's going to be in March, so 3 months from now. I think that's plenty of time for you to get a few days off from work beforehand. Don't worry. Oh, all right. That's a relief. I thought it would be much sooner. Why did she seem so relieved when the wedding was months away? Let's keep talking in English, yeah, Nat. We're still working on Sharon's Hungarian, so it's going to take a while. This is already tough. She whispered something in Hungarian before saying that, and this time I understood. I was feeling a bit intimidated by her. It wasn't going as smoothly as it had with his parents, but I reminded myself that not everyone likes you right away. I was sure we would get along with some effort. A few days passed, and I wasn't always at Craig's place, so our interactions were minimal. Whenever I did go there, Natasha would find an excuse to go out, whether it was shopping or going to the movies with friends. I could see the annoyance on Kevin and Mila's faces. One time when I showed up, Kevin said, "You better not be leaving us today, Nat. You've watched enough films for the week. Spend some time with Sharon and your brother this afternoon." Natasha rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, not this again. I've met her and we've talked. Do I really have to keep doing it? I don't want to get to know her. I already know enough people. She looks like every other girl. I've met her already, so I don't see the big deal. Natasha, English please. This is the 6th time this week." "Okay, I won't be gone long. I'll come back and spend plenty of time with both of you, I promise." Sharon, "Oh, that's okay. I hope you do come back though. I'd really love to know more about you and your work and everything." "Me too. It's just that my friends keep making plans, and since I haven't been home in a while, they're being very stubborn. You must have friends, right? You understand. What if she doesn't? What if she wants you to stay but is too nice to say it? I thought we were speaking in English, ma. Seriously, what did I just say? It's okay, guys, don't stress about it because of me. I'm learning Hungarian anyway, so maybe you won't have to switch to English for me." "How lovely. Anyway, I'll be right back for lunch, or else Mama Bear here will fry me like a fish for dinner. Bye now, see you all soon." And then she left to hang out with her friends again. I found it interesting that she stayed in touch with her friends even after moving so far away. I guess they must have grown up together. I didn't expect her to keep her promise and join us for lunch, but to my surprise, she showed up right on time. She looked annoyed to be there. Like she'd much rather be with those friends she kept talking about. I guess she finally gave in. We talked about how their home had changed over the years and how Kevin's jokes had gotten a bit lamer. It was all fun. Then I decided to ask Natasha what she did in New York. "So Matt, what do you do in New York?" "I'm an interior designer. I've designed some of the best places out there. I keep asking these two oldies to let me redesign this old house, but they never listen. I was hoping you'd knock some sense into them. This is the house you grew up in. It's beautiful the way it is. Come on, Sharon, help me out here. I mean, those weird beige couches are killing me. I actually like it here. Those couches are comfortable too." Of course, she takes their side. She's just trying to be the good girl to get them to like her. Typical. You really have to stop talking about my fiancé like that. What's your problem, Matt? I have no problem. What are you talking about? Is everything okay? Did I say something wrong? Oh, of course you didn't, honey. We were just talking about how the house looks kind of ugly. It's just my opinion, though. Your fiancé isn't very keen on it. Hey, Nat, that reminds me. You didn't tell me what Rye was up to. Why isn't he joining us? Dad, I told you he was busy. He really wanted to come and see Sharon and Craig, but he couldn't find the time. He'll be free soon, and I'll drag him here the next time I come back. I think he prefers it here anyway. Oh, I'd love to meet him. When did you guys get married? Oh, it feels like ages ago, sweetie, but it was just 2 years back. I was designing his new home, and our eyes just met. We got married 6 months later. Wow, that's beautiful. Please bring him around next time. Yes, of course. Natasha just smiled brightly, and everyone went back to eating. It was pretty awkward after that. The conversation switched to other things like the wedding, the venues, the number of guests, and all that, but Natasha didn't show any interest in any of it. She just ate quietly. I wondered if their family dinners were always like this, but who am I kidding? I knew it was me. My Hungarian had improved enough to know that Natasha didn't really like me much. She thought I was just trying to impress Kevin and Mila so they'd like me, and don't get me wrong, I did want them to be happy with me, but I wasn't going to go out of my way to make that happen. My opinions were and always will be my own, but it seemed like Natasha had made up her mind about me the moment she met us at the airport. The more time I spent around her, the more I started catching unpleasant phrases in Hungarian. She would talk to her friend on the phone and say things like, "I don't know why my idiot brother is marrying this girl. What does he even see in her? She doesn't do or say anything interesting and she has no idea how to speak Hungarian." She'd have more frequent conversations on her phone when we were all together, like she always preferred talking to someone else. Sometimes her phone would ring late at night, and she'd be on the call for hours. I assumed it was her husband. She used her words like a sword so often that it pushed me to work even harder on my Hungarian. I felt like I needed to be less meek and stand up for myself a bit more. I wasn't going to just sit there and let Natasha insult me in her language whenever she felt like it, so I became determined. After spending a few days with us, Natasha went back to New York. During that time, I doubled my efforts to learn Hungarian. I was an assistant professor at the university, and even though my subject was linguistics, one of my colleagues, Jenna, was a master in many languages. Hungarian just happened to be one of them. I decided to meet her after hours and talk about my situation. So, as you know, my fiancé is half Hungarian, and like they say, Jenna, knowing someone's language is one step closer to knowing their heart. Not to be cheesy, but I've been trying hard to learn the language. I know a little now, but you're the master. Do you think you could help? Well, I suppose I could. Tell you what, buy me a sandwich for lunch, and I'll let you attend my elementary Hungarian classes for a while. It should be enough to help you catch on to the grammar. That sounds perfect. But you can't attend the whole semester since you're not a student. Attend a few initial classes with the new batch, and I'll help you in private later on. Also, I know you're doing this for your fiancé, sweetie, but are you sure about it? Hungarian is a difficult language to learn. Aren't all languages difficult? I think with enough determination, I can at least become a better conversationalist. A lot of effort also falls on you whenever I ask. Don't worry, I won't mind. Ask as often as you like. Thank you. Oh, I see someone's been working on it, huh? Impressive. Come on, let's go. I'm getting hungry. She laughed, and the two of us headed to the nearest cafeteria. Everything was going smoothly. I knew learning a foreign language was going to be tough, especially since I had to balance it with my work, family, and other commitments. But I was determined. I wanted to be part of this family, and learning the language was a big step toward that. Plus, getting back at Natasha a little bit would be worth it. The next week I started attending Jenna's lectures. She was so good with the language that I could have mistaken her for a native speaker. Her accent was spot on. Since I wasn't going to get more than a month of learning, I made sure to take notes whenever possible. She would always check in with me after each lecture, and I don't think I could have found a better teacher. Meanwhile, Natasha returned a month later. By then, my Hungarian had improved a lot, but I kept it a secret from Craig and the rest of the family. I wanted to surprise everyone by joining in on a conversation out of nowhere, but something happened that stopped me in my tracks. "Hello, darling. Oh, how I've missed you. I know the last time wasn't long enough, but here we are again." "What do you mean I'll disappear again?" "I'll come back to you in no time, I promise." Natasha was on the phone again. The family was outside for a barbecue dinner. The three of them were setting the table and firing up the grill, while I had gone inside to get some plates and other things. "I'd already told you I'm here to attend my brother's stupid wedding. He's getting married to this boring-looking high school teacher or something. I don't even know why. But forget about them, this is all about us. Do you even know how much I love you? If it wasn't for constantly moving around, I'd never leave your side." Oh boy, it seemed like she really missed her husband Rye. I felt a little bad for eavesdropping, so I quickly grabbed the plates and slipped away. But I was glad that I was able to understand almost everything she was saying, even with her unique accent. We set up the table, and the food was quickly prepared. There's nothing like a hot, delicious dinner for everyone to enjoy. "So, have you been busy with all day, Nat? Rye misses you that much?" "Of course he does, Dad. He's my husband," she replied as soon as we sat down to eat. "Oh, I was wondering, does Rye speak Hungarian too?" You must have taught him. Oh, I wish, darling. He's a bit dense and already speaks 2 languages. I think his head is rather full at this point to overload it. Yeah, that guy, smarter than anyone in the room but doesn't get a single word of Hungarian. It's so odd, but it's okay. We don't force it on anyone. Wait a second, if Ray doesn't speak a word of Hungarian, then who was Natasha talking to? I let the thought sink in. I knew I had to dig a bit deeper before jumping to conclusions. So I asked, is Ray going to join us anytime soon? Didn't you say you'd bring him home this time? No, unfortunately, he's left the country for a while for some business in Texas, but he said he'll try to swing by on his way to New York. Nat, the wedding is next week. I don't know about you, but I need him to be here. That's an order from the father of the bride. Chill out, Dad. He'll be here, I promise. Okay, fine, he better be. At that moment, I felt like showing off my Hungarian skills, but I kept quiet. Ray was away on a business trip, and Natasha rarely spent time with us whenever she was home. She was always talking to someone in perfect Hungarian. Something didn't feel right about the whole situation. After all, where did she go all the time? Surely her friends had work to do, so who was she spending so much time with? I needed to dig a bit deeper. A few days passed, and Natasha's behavior became more aggressive. My mother-in-law and I were going dress shopping with some friends. Natasha looked uninterested, but Mila dragged her along anyway. I wasn't too keen on having her there, but I couldn't say no to my mother-in-law. We found the perfect white dress, which felt just right for the wedding. I still remember what Natasha mumbled when I tried it on. There's no way I've been dragged all the way here just for this woman to pick that dress. It's completely classless and not even worth pennies. Sorry, what was that, Nat? I didn't quite catch you. I said it looks so beautiful on you, I could cry. It reminded me of my wedding. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Oh, someone's been practicing. 2 words and you're proud? It'll take you 2 years to make a sentence at this pace. I just smiled at her as if I didn't know what she was saying. The days kept rolling by, and the wedding day was getting closer. One day I was cleaning up at home by myself. Kevin and Craig had gone out to buy something, and we ladies were alone in the house. Natasha had just received a package from someone. It looked like a gift. I was cleaning around anyway, so I decided to walk over to the hall right outside her room. She was already on the phone, screaming in excitement. Oh my God, you didn't? This dress is so pretty, and you remembered my size and my colors, Sergio. My dense husband could never. Wait, who's Sergio? Is Natasha having an affair? I didn't want to think about this possibility. In fact, I hoped my suspicions were wrong, but the more I heard her talk, the more real it became for me. I won't go into all the details, but it seemed like they met right here, years before she got married. Poor Ray has no idea, does he? Even the family seems clueless. However, I didn't expect to let it all out so easily when she spoke up about me at my wedding. The day arrived and the ceremony gave me butterflies. Craig and I were finally united, but it was the after party that was the highlight of the evening. Natasha had invited her friends over, and some of the family's cousins were there too. Ray had flown in from Texas for the wedding, and he seemed like a great guy, but Natasha barely paid any attention to him. She looked like she had something to drink because she was louder than usual, laughing and giving me bold looks. I couldn't hear what she was saying because this was my moment. I didn't want to pay attention to her, but then it happened. She said something like, "I'm so done with this whole wedding. Honestly, I'm just here to drink and look prettier than the bride. I give this marriage tops a year before my brother gets bored of her, like a dog with a dirty bone. Mark my words." And that was it. Something inside me snapped. When everyone was at the table, I lifted a glass and tapped it with a spoon to make a toast. That's when I let out all the Hungarian I'd practiced for so long. Even Jenna was at the table, and I knew I had to impress her. So, as you all know, I've been practicing my Hungarian for a while now. Today, I can proudly give a speech without stumbling, all thanks to my teacher Jenna. Thank you, Jenna. But today isn't about you or me, it's about Craig and his family. I've loved everyone so much. Mila, Kevin, oh, and my dear Natasha. I thought Natasha was the perfect sister to my Craig, but maybe that's why I was so disappointed in her. Disappointed? Can you speak in English so we all understand, please? Oh, I'm sure Natasha will fill you in, Ray. Anyway, a few weeks have passed now, and I can't keep this in anymore. Nat, I'm so sorry for you and Ray, but whatever you've been through, I don't think cheating on such a good man is the right thing to do. Could you please put down that glass and tell everyone who Sergio is? Natash's jaw dropped, her eyes wide open as the blood drained from her face. She stuttered as she tried to speak. What are you talking about, you insane woman? I'm sorry, is it too difficult for you to get in Hungarian, with all the wine you've had today? Let me put it simply, Sergio. He's your secret lover, isn't he, Nat? He gave you that beautiful dress you've been talking about on the phone all this time. Honey, what is going on right now? Ask your sister. She's the one who's been cheating on Ray for so long. How long exactly, Nat? Care to tell us in either of the two languages? The whole dinner table fell silent. Natasha was getting all sorts of looks from everyone. Ray looked like he was in complete disbelief. It was as if someone had dropped a bomb in the middle of the room. Is this true? Ray asked. Natasha didn't say a word. Tears began rolling down her face as she slammed her glass on the table and ran off. Ray just sat there, shell-shocked by everything. The table was silent for a while until I announced it was time to hit the dance floor. Soon, everyone decided to deal with the awkwardness later and danced a few steps with their partners and dates. Rai and Natasha disappeared from the wedding. A few months later, their divorce came through quite unexpectedly. I never heard from Natasha again, and she never came back home. Mila and Kevin were quite disappointed in her for what she did, and it was awkward between us for a while. But they appreciated that I exposed her sooner rather than later. Either way, that look of sheer fright and anguish on her face was worth it. I don't think she'll ever find a man as good as Rai again. Good riddance to her for sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan, and at 33 years old, I found myself grappling with significant personal challenges in the realm of love. After the disappointing end of my first marriage, I made a promise to protect my emotional well-being and steer clear of toxic relationships. Embracing the journey of self-healing and personal growth, I was determined to create a fulfilling partnership that would nourish my spirit. When I met my second husband, he seemed like the perfect match I had always envisioned. We shared a deep connection, and I truly believe we were meant to be together. However, as our relationship deepened, I encountered an unexpected hurdle: my mother-in-law, Carolyn. Her presence became a constant test of my resilience and strength. From the beginning, Carolyn tried to insert herself into our lives. She scrutinized my every move, critiqued my choices, and even attempted to dictate our decisions as a couple. But I stood firm. Having invested so much in my happiness, I refused to let anyone, even a mother-in-law, disrupt the peace I had fought so hard to create. Drawing from my journey of self-discovery, I confronted Carolyn directly, making it clear that her interference was unwelcome. My resolve was met with resistance. Carolyn was a formidable opponent, challenging my boundaries at every turn. Her persistent overreach, including inappropriate comments about joining us on our honeymoon, highlighted her lack of respect for our independence. Determined to uphold the boundaries I had established, I knew it was time to teach Carolyn a lesson about respecting limits. This was essential for her to understand the consequences of her actions. Carolyn's behavior was more than a personal annoyance. It threatened the stability of my marriage, and I was prepared to protect it at all costs. As I navigated these new challenges, I found myself grappling with her overbearing nature. Carolyn had a peculiar way of showing her affection, often overshadowing our moments with her excessive involvement. During family gatherings, which were typically relaxed backyard barbecues, she would often joke about joining us on our honeymoon to capture beautiful moments, or teasingly suggest she might take my place next to Stephen. At first, I dismissed these comments as harmless fun, laughing them off like everyone else. However, her relentless jokes hinted at something deeper. Was she truly joking? The idea seemed absurd. What kind of mother-in-law would genuinely consider intruding on her son's honeymoon? But as time passed, I began to realize that Carolyn might be more serious than I initially thought. This realization hit me hard on my wedding day as I prepared in the dressing room, excitement coursing through me for the life ahead with Stephen. The room buzzed with joy and anticipation when suddenly the door swung open and Carolyn's imposing figure appeared, casting a shadow over the festivities. I turned to face her, trying to keep my smile intact despite the unease growing within me. Without hesitation, Carolyn launched into conversation. "Susan, I need to talk to you," she began, her gaze intense. "Are you truly happy?" Her question caught me off guard. Of course, I was happy, overjoyed, in fact. Stephen was the love of my life, and our wedding was a celebration of our mutual affection and commitment. I couldn't be happier, I replied, my voice brimming with sincerity. Stephen and I are thrilled to be starting our lives together. This encounter was just another example of how Carolyn's presence could be unsettling and oddly direct, challenging the boundaries I had worked so hard to establish. As I eagerly anticipated our honeymoon, a well-deserved break after months of meticulous planning, I was unaware that Carolyn had other ideas. As I adjusted my veil in the mirror, Carolyn leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a mischievous whisper. About the honeymoon, I've decided to come along. It'll be a surprise for Stephen, but let's keep it between us. Her words crashed over me like a wave. Was she serious? Wait, Carolyn, are you really planning to join us on our honeymoon? I asked, hoping for clarity or reassurance that this was just another of her peculiar jokes. Carolyn's face was a mask of determination. Yes, Susan. I've always dreamed of experiencing a romantic getaway like this. I'm his mother, and I've been there for all his milestones. It's important for me to be there. It'll be a bonding experience for all of us. Her words struck me with their audacity. Our honeymoon was meant to be a private journey for Stephen and me, a sacred opportunity to create intimate memories as a newly married couple, not a family excursion. I struggled to find the right words, fighting to keep my composure. I replied, Carolyn, this is our honeymoon. It's a time for us to deepen our bond and focus solely on each other. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, it's crucial to respect our boundaries. Her expression shifted from surprise to disappointment, clearly not expecting my firm objection. Susan, I only want what's best for Stephen. I thought this would be a special surprise for him, a way to bring us closer as a family. Taking a deep breath, I summoned the inner strength I had cultivated through my journey of self-discovery. Carolyn, I understand and respect your love for Stephen, but our honeymoon is sacred. It's a time for us to nurture our relationship and create memories that will lay the foundation for our future together. Stating my ground was essential, not just for our honeymoon, but for establishing a tone of respect and independence in our marriage. I hoped Carolyn would accept our wishes, but the tension thickened in the air as she processed that her plans had been thwarted. It was a defining moment, a test of our new dynamic, and in that instant, I felt empowered, having taken a crucial step in safeguarding my marriage and establishing a foundation of love and respect. You might think that would be the end of the story, right? Unfortunately, my friends, it didn't stop there. As the day of our departure approached, excitement and nervousness fluttered in my heart. Stephen and I were on the verge of embarking on our eagerly awaited honeymoon, a chance to relax and revel in our newlywed bliss. However, a looming storm threatened to overshadow our joy. It was the morning we were set to leave when Carolyn's name appeared on my phone. Taking a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself for whatever she might say. Hello, Carolyn. Dear, I've decided to join you and Stephen on your honeymoon. Isn't that thrilling? Her voice chirped through the phone, sending a wave of frustration over me. Hadn't we already settled this? My voice tightened with exasperation as I responded, Carolyn, we've been through this. This honeymoon is a special time for Stephen and me. We need space to strengthen our relationship as a married couple. Her reply was casual, almost dismissive of my concerns. Yes, dear, but I've made up my mind. I'm coming along. It'll be a grand adventure for all of us. You'll see. With my patience thinning, I asserted more firmly, Carolyn, this isn't up for negotiation. Stephen and I planned this trip as a private getaway. You need to respect that boundary. A tense silence followed, punctuated only by the distant hum of anticipation. I sensed Carolyn's frustration mounting, but I stood firm in my refusal. Don't be so dramatic, Susan. Now tell me, you two are going to Switzerland, right? I've already booked my ticket. I know it was last minute, so I won't be on the same flight, but I'll meet you there. Her words echoed in my mind, but they also presented an opportunity, a chance to steer Carolyn's plans away to reclaim our honeymoon as the sacred space it was meant to be for Stephen and me. I believed that everyone could learn and change, but sometimes it took a bold move to spark that transformation. I was ready to make the move that would ensure our honeymoon remained ours alone. I had already made it clear to Carolyn that I wasn't interested in engaging in a tiresome back and forth with my in-laws. I needed to maintain the peace, so when faced with her unwavering determination to join us, I decided to take a creative approach to protect our private time. Keeping my cool and masking my frustration, I responded with a quick bit of thinking. Actually, Carolyn, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We're headed to New Zealand, not Switzerland. Her reaction was immediate, a gasp escaping her as she processed the sudden twist. Oh my, I must have misunderstood. Yes, I'll need to change my flight right away. Thank you for letting me know, Susan. Absolutely. Change that flight to Auckland, New Zealand, I replied, adding a subtle nudge. And yes, last-minute changes can be pricey, but I know you'd do anything for Stephen. Little did she know, Stephen and I were actually bound for Switzerland. I felt no remorse for the deception. It was a necessary act to preserve our much-needed privacy. Carolyn hurried off to adjust her travel plans, and as I ended the call, a sly smile spread across my face. For now, our honeymoon was safe from any unwanted interference. With each passing minute, my sense of relief grew. Stephen and I were free to start our journey without the looming presence of Carolyn's meddling. It was a small victory, but a significant one, proving my resolve to protect what was sacred to us. As our plane descended into Switzerland, the excitement between us was palpable. The breathtaking landscapes, historic architecture, and vibrant culture awaited us. Stepping off the plane, Stephen exclaimed in awe, "Susan, look at this view. Can you believe we're actually in Switzerland? It's even more beautiful than I imagined." I know, Stephen. It feels like we've stepped right into a fairy tale. I can't wait to explore everything, I replied, equally enchanted by the setting. We arrived at our charming hotel in the heart of Geneva, immediately taken by its elegant decor and cozy ambience. The city buzzed with history, art, and music, and we were eager to dive into this cultural feast. "This hotel is incredible, Susan." "Great choice," Stephen remarked, appreciating the atmosphere that promised to make our honeymoon memorable. "Indeed, we're here to immerse ourselves in the beauty of Geneva, celebrating our new life together in a place as magical as our dreams." "I'm really glad you like it, babe. I wanted our stay to be perfect," I responded, thrilled by Stephen's appreciation. As soon as we arrived, our excitement overcame our weariness. Hand in hand, we walked through the enchanting streets of Geneva, soaking in the grandeur of the Palais des Nations and savoring delicious confections from the charming local cafes. "Stephen, can you believe the beauty of this place? The Alps are breathtaking," I exclaimed, my heart full of joy. "I'm blown away, Susan. This is a dream come true. Thank you for planning such an amazing honeymoon," Stephen exclaimed, his eyes shining with happiness. Exhausted but fulfilled, we returned to our hotel, deciding to rest before continuing our adventure. As Stephen headed for the shower, my phone rang. It was Carolyn. "Hey, Carolyn, that's great. I hope you have a safe flight," I said, trying to keep my tone upbeat. "Oh my gosh, I can hardly contain my excitement. I can't believe you're actually joining us in Auckland. We're going to have the most incredible time together at the oceanfront hotel. You won't believe the breathtaking views of the harbor," Carolyn gushed. I maintained my facade with enthusiasm. "Oh dear, Carolyn, I'm equally thrilled to embark on this adventure with you. I'm so glad you finally came to your senses and saw the beauty in me tagging along on your honeymoon." "I knew you'd be understanding," Carolyn replied, her voice brimming with satisfaction. I rolled my eyes but kept up the act. "Absolutely, Carolyn. You're so right. The flight may be a bit tiresome, but trust me, Auckland will captivate your heart with its vibrant cityscape, the iconic opera house, and stunning beaches. You'll be in awe." "Oh, that sounds marvelous. I simply can't wait to experience it all. Susan, I hope Stephen is ready for some quality mother-son bonding time. This trip will give us a chance to connect on a deeper level," she continued, blissfully unaware of the mix-up. "Carolyn, when Stephen sees you, he'll be over the moon. It's going to be an unforgettable journey filled with laughter, exploration, and beautiful memories," I assured her, masking my true feelings about the situation. "That warms my heart, Susan. I'm eager to create lasting memories with both of you. Rest assured, once I land in Auckland, I'll reach out to you immediately. That will be our signal to commence this grand adventure," Carolyn concluded. "Perfect, Carolyn. The moment you touch down, give me a call and we'll coordinate our plans," I said, ending the call with a sense of relief, knowing our actual destination remained just between Stephen and me. As I hung up, a playful twinge of mischief washed over me. The thought of Carolyn discovering we were actually in Switzerland, not New Zealand, sparked gleeful anticipation within me. I hope this mix-up would serve as a powerful lesson in respecting boundaries and allowing my marriage to Stephen to blossom without her overbearing involvement. The prospect of Carolyn's forthcoming surprise added an exciting layer to our Swiss adventure, heightening the joy bubbling in my spirit. It felt a bit like a game, but the desire to share an unencumbered journey with Stephen, crafting memories meant just for us, was too enticing to resist. However, as I hung up, a mix of relief and anxiety began to settle in. Stephen emerged from the shower, noticing my distracted state. "What's going on?" he asked, sensing the shift in my mood. My initial delight faded, replaced by a twinge of guilt about the entire escapade. I hadn't fully considered how Stephen might feel about the deceptive tactic I employed against his mother. The last thing I wanted was to sow seeds of deceit at the start of our new life together. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to come clean. "Stephen, I have to confess something," I began, the words heavy on my tongue. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concern etching his brow. "Not exactly," I admitted. "You know how Carolyn always joked about tagging along on our honeymoon? Well, she was serious. She intended to join us." His expression shifted from worry to disbelief. "What the hell?" I told her that was out of the question because this time is meant for just us. "I know," I said, my voice faltering, but she wouldn't take no for an answer, so I mistled her about our destination. Instead of arguing, I told her we were going to Auckland, hoping it would keep her from intruding on our privacy. I recounted the whole story, apologizing at every turn. I didn't want Stephen to think I was manipulative or cruel. I simply wanted to safeguard our time together from his mother's overbearing ways. He was silent for a moment after I finished, leaving me anxious about his reaction. Then, to my surprise, he burst into laughter, his genuine amusement filling the room and easing my tension. "You sly fox, Susan. I can't believe you did that. Honestly, it's a relief. My mom's interference has always been exhausting. Now we can truly enjoy our time together." "Wait, so you're not mad?" I asked, surprised yet relieved. "I'm not thrilled about sending her to a foreign country," he chuckled, "but I find the whole situation hilarious. I'm just picturing her face when she realizes the mix-up." We both laughed together, feeling a renewed sense of unity. With the weight of the situation lightened, we immersed ourselves in the beauty of Switzerland, exploring its rich history, breathtaking landscapes, and vibrant culture. Each moment deepened our bond and created cherished memories. Meanwhile, Carolyn remained blissfully unaware that her son found the situation amusing and was in on the ruse. Exhausted from her flight, she called us, expecting us to pick her up from the airport. "Hey, Carolyn, Stephen and I are together right now. There's something you need to know. We're not in New Zealand. We're actually in Switzerland," I said, putting the phone on speaker. "But you said Auckland, the oceanfront hotel," Carolyn stammered, confusion evident in her voice. "Yeah, that was all a trick, Carolyn. Sorry about that, but you really needed to learn," I explained firmly. "A trick for what? What did I do?" she exclaimed, disbelief rising in her tone. "You kept trying to insert yourself into our honeymoon? What kind of mother does that? When you insisted on tagging along, instead of fighting with you about it, I decided to let you believe what you wanted. This way, I could enjoy some quality time with my husband." "How could you do this, Susan? I trusted you. You're no good for my son." Carolyn's hurt was palpable. Stephen, who had been listening intently, finally spoke up. "Mom, it's time you understand that meddling in our lives and disregarding Susan's boundaries has consequences." This was her way of setting a boundary. "What? You too?" Carolyn's voice cracked as she absorbed his stance. This moment, fraught with tension, underscored our commitment to each other and the importance of respecting our new family unit. "I can't believe you're taking her side. I can't believe you've deceived me like this. I raised you. I've been there for you through everything." Carolyn's voice trembled with hurt. "Mom, this isn't about deception. It's about setting boundaries," I replied, trying to convey the necessity of our actions. "Susan and I are building our lives together. You must respect our choices and let us forge our path. We love you, but maintaining healthy boundaries is key." Her voice echoed through the phone, loud enough to attract attention nearby. "You've humiliated me. I can't believe my son would turn against me like this." "Carolyn, please try to see where we're coming from," I urged, my tone steady yet empathetic. "This wasn't done to embarrass you. We need to make it clear that we require our own space and independence. It's time for you to let us build our lives and respect the boundaries we've established." "I don't want to hear it. You both are selfish and ungrateful," she shot back, her frustration palpable. "Call me back when you're ready to have a real conversation." With that, she abruptly ended the call, leaving herself likely bewildered and upset at the airport. While I might have felt guilty, instead, I felt relieved. Standing up for our marriage's boundaries was necessary, even if uncomfortable. Wanting privacy on our honeymoon wasn't unreasonable. It was unusual for a mother to insist on tagging along. "Stephen, are you all right with how things turned out?" I asked, concerned about his feelings. "Yes, Susan, don't worry about Mom. She's embarrassed and frustrated, but maybe this will finally show her that her behavior isn't okay. She needs to respect our boundaries, whether she likes it or not," he reassured me, his tone resolute yet caring. As we continued our honeymoon in Switzerland, enjoying the stunning vistas and cultural delights, the issue with Carolyn receded into the background. We decided she would contact us when she was ready to reconcile, and perhaps she would make something of her unplanned trip to New Zealand. Regardless, I felt confident she'd think twice before trying to interfere with our plans in the future. One night during our honeymoon, I suddenly woke up to overhear my husband engaged in a secretive and disturbing phone conversation. Trembling with anxiety, I carefully peered at his phone and discovered something shocking. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I took his passport, packed my things, and flew back to New York alone, planning my next move against him. Upon my return, I was approached by a mysterious individual. "My name is Kate," she introduced herself. "I work at an office in New York. I met your husband through a mutual friend. After a few dinners and realizing our chemistry, we married following a year of dating. Yuan is handsome and kind-hearted, but there was something that had been troubling me. My concern began as our wedding approached. Normally, Yuan came home later than I did, but one day when my overtime extended and I returned late, something felt off. I noticed a pair of women's shoes next to Yuan's work shoes, shoes that didn't belong to me. Suspicion grew as I overheard a conversation between a man and a woman. Though I couldn't catch all of it, Yuan's unmistakable voice and the woman's cheerful tone fueled my worries. I quickly activated the video function on my smartphone and entered the living room, only to find Yuan and my mother-in-law there. "Oh, you're back. Welcome home, Kate," Yuan said, his tone apologetic. I was relieved to see my suspicions about infidelity were unfounded, but then another surprise awaited me. The room was filled with stacked cardboard boxes. Confused, I asked, "What's with all these boxes? What's going on?" "We're packing for a move," Yuan explained. "Mom is helping." "Moving where?" I asked, my head spinning. "You didn't mention anything about moving." "Oh, I assumed that after getting married, moving into our house was the next step," Yuan's mother said nonchalantly. "I wasn't informed of any plans to live with your parents," I protested. "This sudden change disrupts my vision of our married life. I can't agree to such unilateral decisions." My mother-in-law's response was casual. "Isn't it normal to live together after marriage? If that's an issue, you might as well consider divorce." Her words cut deeply. "It's easier for both of us to live here, especially if you ever need anything. It's a win-win," Yuan added. Feeling cornered between Yuan and his mother, I reluctantly agreed to move into their home. The transition proved incredibly stressful. Yuan's attachment to his mother became even more apparent. He constantly referenced her opinions, and most of the household chores were still managed by her. Whenever I cooked, he'd comment that Mom's cooking tastes better. It seemed my mother-in-law took pleasure in this dynamic, and my father-in-law remained silently observant, never engaging with me. I often felt undervalued in the house. What bothered me most was my mother-in-law's extravagant spending habits. The situation was more challenging than I had anticipated, and the strains on our marriage began to show. I soon realized that my mother-in-law had a penchant for luxury brand items, buying them eagerly whenever a new release caught her eye. Each time a new product was announced, she would ask me, "I want this, but I'm short on money. Can you lend me some?" Although I thought to myself that if she didn't have the money, she shouldn't buy it, I couldn't object since she handled all the housework. As a result, the savings I had accumulated since my student days were dwindling. When I brought this up to my husband, he simply said, "We're allowed to live here, so don't complain." While I didn't actively choose to live in this house, there was a reason I stayed. Deep down, I knew my husband genuinely respected me. On our days off, he always made an effort to spend quality time with me and had even planned our honeymoon in advance. Despite the difficulties of living with his family, his love kept me going. Finally, our much-anticipated honeymoon arrived. We were heading to Italy, a destination I had always dreamed of visiting for its authentic cuisine. My husband had made this dream a reality, and the excitement of traveling abroad with the person I loved most made my heart race. However, our eagerly awaited adventure took a drastic turn one night. Late into the evening, I woke up to use the bathroom and noticed that my husband was not beside me. Assuming he might be up for the same reason, I left the bedroom and overheard him on the phone. Who could he be calling at this hour? As I listened closely, a chilling statement reached my ears. By this time tomorrow, Kate will be long gone to the afterlife. Don't worry, Mom. I won't mess up. I'll call you later. The voice on the phone seemed to be his mother's, and the implication of what he said about me being in the afterlife sent a shiver down my spine. Fearful that he might notice me, I hurriedly pretended to be asleep. When my husband returned to bed and soon fell into a deep sleep, I quietly took his smartphone and went to the bathroom. His phone wasn't locked, making it easy for me to access. Although I knew snooping was wrong in this potentially life-threatening situation, I felt it was necessary. I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. I opened his messaging app and read through his conversation with his mother. The messages revealed a chilling plan. He intended to kill me for the insurance money, which his mother would then use to splurge on luxury brands. The blood drained from my face as the horrifying reality sunk in. My husband had always been somewhat of a mama's boy, but I had never imagined he would scheme with his mother like this. In a panic, I took a screenshot of their messages and lay back on the bed. Even with my eyes closed, the overwhelming fear made it impossible to sleep. The night dragged on, and when morning arrived, bringing the usual buzz of trains and people starting their day, I knew I had to get out of there. I quickly gathered my belongings, deciding to leave the hotel and head home. As I packed my suitcase, I noticed my husband's passport on the table. A sudden idea struck me. I would leave him stranded abroad. I grabbed the passport and rushed out, heading straight to the airport. Ignoring his numerous calls, I boarded a flight back to New York. Once home, I began preparing for my retaliation. I knew I couldn't return to the house where I lived with his parents, so I found a reasonably priced hotel in New York. I started collecting additional evidence and contacting lawyers. Whenever his parents were out, his mother at her craft class and his father golfing, I would sneak into their house to retrieve my belongings. My husband's relentless attempts to contact me went unanswered as I ignored them completely. One day, while packing my things at his parents' house, I thought I had a couple of hours before they would return. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. "Kate, is that you?" I jumped, startled to find my father-in-law standing there. He wasn't supposed to be back so early. Our honeymoon was supposed to last until today. My presence there was unexpected, and I struggled to come up with an explanation. Should I tell him the truth about why I had returned to New York? But what if he was involved in the plan with my husband? As I was on the verge of panicking, my father-in-law suggested, "How about we go somewhere else to talk, like a nearby cafe?" To my surprise, he made this offer, likely because his wife would be returning soon. I agreed, and we headed to the cafe. "Why are you here in the middle of your honeymoon? Is Ewan back?" he asked once we were seated. I hesitated, unsure whether he was involved in their scheme. If he was, revealing my plan for revenge would be futile. "Didn't your wife mention anything to you?" I asked cautiously. After a moment of thought, he replied, "She hasn't said a word to me." His expression suggested genuine confusion. Relieved, I decided to explain everything. "Do you know about this plan?" I handed him the printed messages between my husband and his mother. His eyes widened as he read them. "I've seen them talking together a few times, but I had no idea they were plotting something like this," he admitted. It was clear he was genuinely unaware of their scheme. I told him how I had overheard my husband's conversation with his mother in Italy, which led me to discover their plan. The shock drove me to return to New York alone. "I see. I'm deeply sorry that my wife was involved in something like this," he said. "There's no need to apologize, father-in-law. It's not your fault," I reassured him. "As for the future, I'm truly sorry, but I'm considering ending my marriage with Yuan." "That's your decision, Kate. I want you to make the choice that's right for you." "I'm at a loss for words about all this," he said. Afterwards, my father-in-law continued to apologize. Up until now, I had only sensed a distant atmosphere from him and worried that he might not think well of me. But seeing his genuine concern and sincerity, I began to believe this was his true nature. I couldn't reconcile how someone as kind-hearted as my father-in-law could have such a problematic wife and son. As I pondered this, he shared an incident with me. "Kate, did my wife ask you for money to buy luxury brand items?" he asked. Yes, she did, I admitted. It might be partly my fault. How so? He asked. When we were newlyweds, I gave her an expensive designer bag for her birthday. Since then, she seemed obsessed with branded goods. I wish she'd choose items more appropriate for her age, he explained. I didn't realize she even borrowed money to buy them. I got really angry with her for that, and I thought she had understood. I never imagined she would try to get money from you. I must have underestimated her. He bowed his head in apology. I had never understood my mother-in-law's obsession with branded items. But even if that was a factor, I couldn't forgive her actions. It's not your fault, father-in-law, I said. She continued her behavior even after you warned her. It's her own issue. That's comforting to hear, he replied. By the way, where's Yuan? Didn't he come back with you? I hesitated. How would he react if he knew his son was stranded abroad? I had to be honest now. The truth is, I took Yuan's passport with me, so he might not be able to return for a while, I confessed. I know it was a drastic move, but it was the only way to ensure no one interfered with my preparations. My father-in-law looked shocked at first, but then he chuckled. I see. Given the situation, it might have been unavoidable. That's why he said that. Wait, what did he say? I asked. Well, I overheard my wife talking to Yuan on the phone on the day you returned to New York. Yuan seemed a bit flustered by your absence but mentioned that it might actually make our plan work. At that moment, I didn't understand, but now it makes sense, he said. If that's the case, I'll support you too. That would be very helpful, I said. As we chatted, catching up on everything that had happened so far, my smartphone rang unexpectedly. It was Yuan. He must have realized his passport was missing while preparing to return home and decided to call. I answered the call. Hello. Kate, finally, you picked up. Where are you? I've been worried sick because I couldn't reach you. I'm glad to hear you're okay, Yuan said, his voice filled with concern. I'm relieved you're okay too, I replied. I'm sorry. The truth is, I received an urgent message from my parents and had to return to New York immediately, I explained. I was so rushed that I didn't have time to contact you. I see, Yuan said, but do you know where my passport is? Actually, because I had to leave in such a hurry, I accidentally took your passport with me, I admitted. What am I supposed to do now? Yuan asked, sounding frustrated. If it's alright with you, I think it would be faster for you to get your passport reissued there rather than waiting for me to send it, I suggested. Reissue it, Yuan said, exasperated. You know I can't take any more time off from work. I'll contact your workplace and explain the situation, I assured him. I'll also inform my in-laws. I'll handle it from here. Okay, I trust you. I'm truly sorry for the trouble. Please take care and come back safely, Yuan said. I ended the call and took a deep breath. My quick thinking had helped manage the situation. Thanks to my father-in-law's assistance, the process of moving our belongings and handling the divorce proceedings went smoothly. The day finally came for my husband to return. His passport had been reissued without issue, and he came home with my mother-in-law who had picked him up from the airport. I'm back, Yuan announced. I didn't expect such a mess at the end. Really, it's Kate's fault. She needs to be more careful. My mother-in-law, having heard the story from Yuan, grumbled in annoyance. Perhaps she was displeased because my early return had disrupted some of her plans. While I had my own grievances to address, I kept my focus on the upcoming situation, considering these matters trivial in comparison. When Yuan and my mother-in-law arrived, my father-in-law, with a stern look on his face, said, Sorry to bother you right after you got home, but come here. He then led them to the living room. Please have a seat, I said, motioning to my husband and mother-in-law. They looked slightly startled, but complied and sat down quietly. I fixed my gaze on them and began, You must be tired from the trip, but there's something important we need to discuss. Important? My husband asked, his confusion evident. What are you talking about? I'll get straight to the point, I said, my voice steady. Yuan, I want a divorce. What? A divorce? Yuan blinked rapidly, clearly taken aback. Kate, what are you talking about? You left our son in Italy, and now you want a divorce just as you're back? This is incomprehensible and thoughtless. Thoughtless? I retorted. Isn't that what you two are being? What did you say? My mother-in-law exclaimed, her eyes widening in shock. Do you really have no awareness? What is this supposed to mean? Can you please explain? I handed her a printout of a messaging app screen. This is a conversation between you and my husband, discussing your outrageous plans. What's this? Anyone could fake something like this, she scoffed. Plans and evidence don't mean anything if they're made up. If this alone isn't enough, I said, placing a voice recorder on the table. How about this? I pressed play, and the recorded conversation began. The recording clearly captured my husband and mother-in-law discussing how their plans were thwarted by my unexpected return to New York and their subsequent disappointment. I managed to record this thanks to my father-in-law, I explained. My mother-in-law is hard of hearing and always uses speaker mode, making her calls loud and clear. My father-in-law took the initiative to record their conversation. This should be hard to argue against, don't you think? Wait a minute, Ewan said, his voice tense. Kate, it's not like that. Please just wait. I just acted out of necessity for my mother, Ewan said, his voice earnest. I never really wanted any of this. But she said she needed money for luxury items, and I couldn't bear to see her sad. Now I realize I don't want a divorce. Let's leave this house and start a new life together, just the two of us. How about that? I sighed deeply, struggling to keep my frustration in check. What kind of thought process leads to such optimism? I asked. You should really stop calling her mom all the time. It doesn't sit well with me. I appreciate your care for your mother, but plotting to get rid of your wife for insurance money to buy her gifts is beyond comprehension. Living with someone like that? No way. Just the thought gives me a headache. Ewan seemed unprepared for my response and was at a loss for words. I'm going to divorce you no matter what, I continued firmly. I'll be demanding the division of property from both of you and also asking for reimbursement for the luxury items I bought for your mother in the past. But if you do that, I won't be able to buy any more bags or watches, my mother-in-law interjected, still fixated on her luxury goods. Her obsession left me speechless. Enough was enough. Suddenly, my father-in-law shouted, all you think about is yourself. Have you ever considered how much pain Kate has been through? Are the luxury items you crave so desperately worth someone else's suffering? Do you even understand the emotional burden you've placed on her? His words struck a chord and silenced them. While his outburst lightened my mood slightly, I wasn't finished yet. Ewan, when did you find out? I asked. On the first night of our honeymoon, he replied, looking down. I overheard you talking to your mother in the middle of the night. That's when I found out, so I returned to New York the next morning. My husband seemed to realize something at that moment. You didn't tell the company about this, did you? Who knows? I replied, but I think we'll find out soon enough. As if on cue, Ewan's cell phone rang. You've got to be kidding me, I said. The call was from his company. Hesitating, Ewan answered, oh, yes. What? Fired? Wait a minute, but before he could explain, the call ended. I've already submitted evidence regarding this matter to your company, I said. With the loss of both his job and his marriage, Ewan crumbled to the floor, unable to come to terms with reality. From now on, any communication will go through my lawyer. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Thus, our brief marriage ended abruptly. However, the story didn't end there. My lawyer advised me to report their actions to the police as their plan constituted illegal activity. I followed the advice, and while they weren't arrested, they did face fines. My husband struggled to find new employment, and my mother-in-law faced criticism from the community. To cover the damages and other costs, she had to sell most of her luxury possessions. The only item she kept was a bag given to her by my father-in-law on her birthday. Now, my father-in-law controls the family finances, and my mother-in-law's spending is severely restricted. They've certainly learned a valuable lesson. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying my single life in a city apartment. Though my marriage ended soon after it began, I don't feel lonely or sad. On the contrary, I feel refreshed and liberated from that household. If I ever decide to marry again, I'm done with living with in-laws. Living alone has its challenges, but the freedom to live without catering to others is truly liberating. Now that I'm free from my mother-in-law's financial demands, both mentally and financially, I've started saving again. My hope is to share happy times with someone special in the future. That's my wish.
My name is Karen, and I'm 25 years old. 6 months ago, my grandfather, who raised me, passed away. Today, the lawyer will open his will. I was visiting my grandfather's house with my sister, Susan, who is 4 years older and my only family. Our parents died in an accident 20 years ago, and since then, our grandparents raised us. After my grandmother passed away from an illness a few years ago, my grandfather's spirits declined year by year, and he frequently fell ill. Concerned, I lived in an apartment near his house and often checked on him. "You're a grown woman. It's unbecoming to keep coming back home," my grandfather would say, but he always laughed cheerfully nonetheless. Then one day, as I visited like I usually did, I found him lying in pain at the entrance. Panicked, I called the ambulance, but my grandfather passed away just like that. "Hey, what are you daydreaming about? At least prepare some tea." My sister's voice brought me back to reality. "Right, the lawyer will be here soon," I responded. Heading to the kitchen, I saw Susan lazily stretching out her legs on the mat and yawning. I could still smell her strong perfume even in the kitchen, a bit away, and I made a face. "She's the same as always," I murmured, placing the kettle on the stove. Susan had always cared only about herself. Once she hit her teens, she started dyeing her hair and hanging out with delinquents, always demanding money without working, even when she caused trouble and our grandparents had to apologize on her behalf. She was unperturbed. I, being the quiet one, often dealt with the fallout. She hadn't changed much even as an adult, drifting around with unstable jobs. I knew she had been asking our grandfather for money whenever I wasn't around. It was easy to imagine she would find this all too troublesome if it weren't for the inheritance. "Aw, you must be the lawyer. Thanks for coming today," I heard Susan's high-pitched formal voice, indicating the lawyer had arrived. I hurriedly placed tea leaves into the teapot and headed toward the entrance. "Thank you for coming today." I had met the lawyer at the funeral. His eyes were as kind as my grandfather's, and a lawyer's badge shone brightly on his chest. After offering incense in front of my grandfather's portrait, he took a sip of the tea I served and then took out my grandfather's will. It had been entrusted to him while my grandfather was still alive. The content was as follows: my elder sister Susan was to inherit $20 million in cash, and I, the younger daughter, was to inherit the house and the land it sits on. Upon hearing this, Susan burst out laughing. $20 million in cash for the elder daughter and only an old house for the younger one? How hilarious! It's just right for someone as plain as you. "It's not just the house. There's also the land," I retorted. Susan laughed snidely. "The value of this land in such a godforsaken place is hardly surprising. I would have preferred cash. I guess Grandpa must have had a soft spot for me after all." I can't deny that I was a bit shocked. I suppose my grandfather wanted me to protect his beloved house and land where he spent his life with my grandmother. A house and land, that's pretty awesome, isn't it? Brian, my boyfriend, exclaimed in surprise after hearing my story. I shook my head, implying it wasn't as great as it sounded. "Not really. My sister inherited $20 million in cash. That's more impressive." Saying it out loud, I felt a sense of emptiness, even though I was being modest. Verbalizing it felt like an acknowledgement. "Wow, beautiful and rich. She's got the better deal," Brian said insensitively. Realizing his gaffe, he quickly added, "Your comfort means more to me than money, Karen." Brian has been my boyfriend since I started working. We met at a social event, and being of the same age, we clicked well. I introduced him to my grandfather and my sister. While he hasn't proposed yet, I have been considering marriage. Today was our first date in a while, and I ended up telling Brian about my inheritance. I suppose it was because I thought he would become my husband someday. Little did I know I would come to regret this. A few days later, I visited the family home I had inherited from my grandfather. I intended to clean and sort out his belongings. The property was large, but the house was modest. I figured I could manage it on my own. As I looked around the house, I pondered. It's close to my workplace. Maybe I should move here. Living here leisurely with a cat doesn't sound too bad. There would be no rent to pay, and while there might be maintenance costs, I've been working hard and saving, so it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe someday with Brian. Feeling embarrassed at the thought, I shook my head vigorously and rolled up my sleeves to begin cleaning. Just then, I received a call. My sister's name appeared on my smartphone screen. Sis, what's up? Hey, Karen, having fun all by yourself in that old house? My sister seemed to be drunk. She always had a unique way of extending her words, but today it was particularly bad. Are you drinking? It's still afternoon, I pointed out with a sigh. Oh, you're such a goody two-shoes. She sighed exaggeratedly. She had definitely been drinking. I was thinking about moving here eventually, I answered, hoping to end the conversation quickly. Really? I'm enjoying a suite in a luxury hotel right now, my sister said, raising her voice in a somewhat exaggerated way. Guess who I'm with right now? I have no idea. Boring. It's that kind of attitude that'll make Brian dislike you, she taunted. I'm sorry, Karen. I was flabbergasted when Brian's voice took over the line. The sudden intervention threw me off balance, dizzying question marks popping up in my head, but I pushed away my imagination, though a disgusting scenario had already formed in my mind. Surprised. Huh? My sister's mean-spirited voice chimed in. Ever since I introduced him to her, she had found Brian quite a catch. She boasted about how she had been attracted to him since then, knew where he worked because of me, and approached him as soon as he left work. He came along readily when she asked, telling her she was hundreds of times more attractive than me. I listened in stunned silence. Karen, I'm really sorry, Brian's voice again. Tell me it's a mistake, I tried to say, but the words wouldn't come. As a man, I had to take this opportunity. What? I do feel bad about it, but come on, it's impossible to resist a beautiful woman who has $20 million, right? The way he spoke, as if asking me to understand, drained my emotions. I felt a cold sensation like my blood was being drained from me. You know what? I don't need a man like you. I could hear my sister laughing uproariously in the background. The voice on the phone changed back to her. Well, that's how it is. From now on, let's not consider ourselves sisters, okay? I wouldn't want you turning to me just because you're broke. With those words, she ended the call, overwhelmed by emotions that had lagged behind. All I could do was cry out. 5 years have passed since then. I had a cat in my lap, dozing off in front of my laptop. The cat purred contentedly in its sleep. Today was my day off, but I still had a bit of work I brought home. Oh no, this won't get the work done, I said, feeling guilty but having to move the cat off my lap. Just as I reached out, my phone started to ring. An unfamiliar number was displayed. Thinking it could be work-related, I answered the call without any suspicion. Hello? Karen, long time no see. I instantly knew who it was and froze. The distinctive way of speaking was unmistakably my sister's. It's you, Karen, isn't it? I can tell just from your initial hello. After all, I'm your big sister. 5 years had passed, making Susan 34. A smirk formed at the corner of my mouth at her unchanging way of talking. You're just the same. By the way, I came home and there's a hotel standing. Did you sell the house? That's none of your business. Oh, come on, it's quite a grand hotel. Huh, you must have made a good chunk of change. Huh? Getting fed up, I was about to end the call when she started to chatter about her current situation. According to Susan, she had blown through the inheritance in about 2 years. Now she even had a considerable amount of debt. Even Brian, who she's still hanging around with, seemed to be drowning in debt. I was speechless. Honestly, I couldn't care less. So, lend me some money, Susan yelled. I've always wondered why Grandpa distributed his estate that way. I answered calmly. But on the day you took Brian from me and cut ties, I understood. I started talking slowly, recalling the events of 5 years ago. When Brian broke up with me, I was crushed. After crying my heart out, I sat dazed in my room, staring into space. I'm such a fool, I murmured. As large tears began to spill again, my gaze fell on a painting I had made as a child and had gifted to my grandfather. He had framed it and kept it hanging lovingly. Rising unsteadily, I picked up the painting. Grandpa. Nostalgia and loneliness welled up, and tears started to come again. Suddenly, something dropped from the back of the frame. Picking it up, I saw it was a fresh sheet of note paper addressed to me. I remembered how, when I was little, I used to stick notes on the back of this frame and exchange secret messages with my grandfather. It was like a family journal. Knowing that I was to inherit the house, he probably figured I'd find this note. I'm glad I noticed. I shuddered at the thought that I might have missed it. The letter was dated just before my grandfather passed. To Karen. I knew you'd definitely notice this letter. Right now, you're probably wondering why I distributed my estate in such a manner, cash to your sister and an old house and land for you. It may seem like I favored Susan, but that's not the case. Despite any claims of favoritism, I wanted to leave most of my estate to you, who cared for me till the end. I finally understood what had been bothering me. No matter what, Grandpa thought more of me. I was deeply hurt by Susan's words at that time. Despite having loved my grandfather more, a kind of jealousy. I continued to read the letter. But Susan would not be satisfied with a regular division, even as her grandfather. I must admit she's terribly greedy. Exactly, Grandpa, I thought. She even took my boyfriend from me. That's what I wanted to tell him in my heart. That's why I arranged it this way. If at first glance Susan appears to have received the better deal, she won't pay attention to your share. The value of this land in our area is continuously increasing due to ongoing urban development. As of the time I'm writing this, it's not worth Susan's $20 million yet, but the value will surely increase in the future. You can live here if you're attached to it or sell it when its value rises enough to make a good profit. All I want is for you to be happy. When I finished conveying the contents of the letter, Susan clicked her tongue and said, "Hag. I lived in that house for a while, but when my marriage was settled, I decided to sell the house. Just like grandfather's letter said, the land value had risen enough anyway. I'm never lending you money." Susan seemed frustrated, but, as if she had a good idea, she said, "Right. If you want, I can give Brian back to you. So help your sister. It's a good deal, right?" At that moment, I felt something snap inside me. Enough is enough. You've been taken care of by Grandpa, and yet you haven't shown a hint of gratitude. I despise you for that, and you're not my sister anymore. Besides, I'm already married. I don't need Brian, and I don't even want to see his face. Stay out of my life for good. I said what I needed to say and hung up. I quickly set up call blocking. My cat, who had been cowering on the bed, looked up at me with wide eyes. I quickly picked up my cat and said, "I'm sorry." After that, it seems Susan contacted Brian, and they both stormed into our old house. Did they try to return Brian to me? There's a respectable in there now, but they must have misunderstood something and were shouting that they were my relatives, even though I had sold the land and had nothing to do with it. It's simple for those two. They thought, Karen sold the land and an inn was built. She must be the owner. Of course, the staff reported them to the police. The two of them were arrested because they had destroyed several items in the inn. Furthermore, it was discovered that they had been committing marriage fraud for money in the past. It seems they'll be sent to prison together. I was also questioned by the police, but I was able to prove that I had no involvement quickly, as we were estranged, and I was released. As my husband, who came to pick me up, and I were walking through the station, We heard screaming and turned our gaze. There were Susan and Brian, looking completely different. Fortunately, they didn't notice us. Both of them had messy hair, worn-out clothes, and looked nothing like the two people I remembered. Especially Susan, who never skipped her makeup and fashion, looked even more different. They were probably being moved to a different location. As I watched the two of them, filled with a sense of melancholy, my husband and I locked eyes. I grabbed the hand he extended, and we left the police station. "Are you okay?" My husband, always concerned, looked at me with gentle eyes. "I'm okay. I have you and this little one," I said, touching my fairly noticeable belly and smiling back. In my belly, a new member of our family was growing. Money is important, but there's something even more valuable. That's what I want to teach our child, with my husband by my side.
So, you already have the divorce papers ready? Are you trying to scare me? You know I'm ready for this at any time. You better calm down and think about what you just said. With that, my husband Jackson got up and went into his room. My name is Kama, and I'm a 28-year-old office worker. I got married a year ago to a man named Jackson. We met on a blind date, and after dating for a year and a half, he proposed to me. Although I thought we got married a bit too soon, I'd always wanted to be married and have children before turning 30, so I accepted his proposal. However, I later realized I should have been more cautious. The first surprise came when Jackson changed his job as soon as we got married. Out of the blue, he said he was changing jobs. Why all of a sudden? I asked him. He replied, "Because I can't show my full potential there." I was taken aback, especially when he told me he had already submitted his resignation and would leave at the end of the month. He managed to get a new job, but the salary was lower than his previous one. I thought it was fine since I was also working, but then Jackson started asking me to quit my job. I would have been okay with quitting if his income could support us both. However, as I mentioned, he had just changed jobs and his salary was now lower. Jackson insisted that his salary would increase soon, but we had no idea when that would be. If I quit my job now, we wouldn't be able to save any money and would struggle to cover expenses like rent and car payments. In short, we couldn't manage on Jackson's salary alone. I told Jackson, "I won't quit my job until your salary goes up." Jackson seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit. Every time I gave him the same answer. Now we've been married for a year and Jackson's salary still hasn't increased. He keeps asking, "When are you going to quit?" I'm tempted to sarcastically say, "Now," and then tell him I'm just kidding because I can't quit yet. If he wants me to quit so badly, he should earn more money. I feel like he should focus on his work instead of persistently asking me to quit. I wondered why Jackson wants me to quit my job so badly, and I finally figured it out. It seems Jackson wants me to take care of his mother, Helen. Whenever we visited my in-laws' house, Jackson would say to Helen, "I just want to make things easier for you, Mom." Helen would graciously thank him, and then Jackson would add, "But we're both working," giving me a meaningful look. It was as if he was subtly pushing me to quit my job. Jackson claims his mother needs assistance, but Helen isn't sick or in need of care. She's healthy and quite active. In fact, she earns enough from her part-time job to support her hobbies, social outings, and live a fulfilling life. Realistically, she doesn't require my help at all. If I were in Helen's shoes, I'd feel disheartened to be seen as needing care when I'm perfectly capable. But Jackson continues to insist that I take care of Helen. "Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could go check on Mom every day," Jackson suddenly voiced his thoughts. It seemed he wanted me to visit my in-laws' house daily, and hearing this was exhausting. I persisted in questioning my husband. "Helen is perfectly healthy, so what exactly do you expect me to do?" Jackson responded matter-of-factly, "There are plenty of things you could do. You could help with housework or run errands. There's a lot to assist her with." "But Helen works part-time and spends time with her friends during the day, so she's not home much, right?" I countered. "Even if Mom isn't home, you could still handle the housework, couldn't you?" Jackson's words left me baffled. What is he saying? Am I supposed to be her maid? I thought to myself. Jackson seems to be very concerned about appearances, especially in front of his parents. If he's so determined to care for them, he should handle the household chores himself. I wasn't interested in indulging Jackson's pride, so I didn't quit my job and avoided visiting my in-laws on my days off. However, I did make sure to visit them during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Jackson often assigned me tasks whenever we visited my in-laws together. He'd ask me to clean up, assist his mom, check if anything was needed from the store, and so on. But I never acted on these requests. When he asked me to go to the store, I'd respond with, "Don't you know more about this area than I do?" He'd then say, "It wouldn't make sense if I did it." I didn't really understand his reasoning. It seemed like he just wanted to control me and feel good about taking care of his parents, didn't it? Over time, that's how I started to view Jackson. Could it be that he's more concerned with appearances than genuinely caring for me? When I boldly asked him, "Why didn't you pitch in or quit your job to care for your own mother?" he appeared extremely uncomfortable and had a disgusted expression on his face. "That's not something I'm supposed to do. I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will think that you are a considerate, useful wife. I hope you realize how kind I am to you," he said. In other words, he wants to dump all the difficult tasks on his wife and show off how good he is as if it's something remarkable. Well, I'm not his servant or slave, and I don't deserve to be treated disrespectfully in front of my in-laws. If Jackson continues making unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll stand up for myself. But despite talking to him, Jackson hasn't changed. He still asks, "Are you going to quit your job?" And whenever we visit my in-laws, he orders me around just like before. I had enough and decided it was time to discuss it with him seriously. "I think we need to talk about our future," I said. "What are you even trying to say?" Jackson replied, sounding annoyed. "I'm honestly fed up. I'm tired of you constantly asking me when I'll quit my job and exhausted from you pressuring me to take care of Helen," I explained. "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife and it's your duty to care for your husband's parents," Jackson said. "Don't you think that's a huge responsibility for me? Shouldn't you, as their biological child, be responsible for helping with the housework and taking care of your own parents in the first place?" I asked. "No way, it's the wife's duty to do it. Are you the kind of person who doesn't care about family?" "I'm really disappointed to hear you say that," Jackson responded. "Then let me ask you this, how have you been taking care of my parents?" "If I asked you to care for my parents, would you do it then?" I questioned. Jackson stared at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents? So does that mean you won't take care of my parents now or ever?" I pressed. "The husband's parents and wife's parents are completely different," Jackson replied. "What difference does that make, anyway? I don't get it," I said, feeling frustrated. "I didn't realize you were so clueless. It's like talking to my old boss," I continued. "What are you saying?" Jackson asked, confused. "I'm saying the husband's parents should come first. You should take care of your wife's parents," I clarified. "What?" I exclaimed. "So you only prioritize your own blood-related family? I'm so disappointed in you. I won't be visiting your parents anymore." "Ha, why would you do that? Enough is enough. I'm the one who wants you to stop this nonsense," I retorted. "No way, how dare you talk back like that? My mom is right," Jackson shot back. "Ha, Mom was talking about you. She said you're a badly behaved wife. That's why she gave me this." With that, Jackson pulled out a piece of paper from his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had divorce papers ready?" I was shocked, but Jackson seemed strangely proud. "See? I scared you, didn't I? I'm prepared for this anytime, so think about what you just said," Jackson declared smugly before leaving for his room. Unbelievable. Why is Jackson so selfish? That look of triumph on his face. It's clear the divorce papers are a threat to make me obey him. The fact that Helen was involved made me even more suspicious. Jackson is acting like a puppet for his mom, trying to control me while following her orders. It's ridiculous. I won't let Jackson have his way. How can he not see our marriage is in trouble when he acts like this? His lack of understanding just annoys me more. Jackson had already completed the divorce papers and handed them to me with witnesses, including Helen and his friends. This meant I could sign and file them whenever I chose. The next day, after Jackson went to work, I filled out the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. As a precaution, I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate. I called my parents and explained the situation, knowing Jackson might threaten to file a marriage certificate on his own if he found out. My parents were shocked that I had already prepared the divorce papers but fully supported my decision. Outraged by Jackson's behavior, they offered to help me move my belongings immediately. Taking a leave from work, I had my parents come over and relocate all my things to their house while Jackson was away. I decided to stay with my parents for a while. It was the first time in a long time that I felt truly comfortable and at ease in their home. Reflecting back, Jackson never did his share of housework. I was the one cooking dinner after long work days and handling all the cleaning and laundry on my days off. On top of that, he expected me to care for his parents, which was impossible. That night, Jackson called me, probably just back from work. "Hello? Hey, where are you right now?" "I'm at my parents' house." "Oh, why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying the night." I almost laughed. How could he think I was staying when I had taken most of my belongings with me? It showed his selfishness to even suggest that I move out of the house. I'm not coming back, I said firmly. What are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food. Make it yourself, I replied, ending the call. I couldn't discuss divorce with him if he continued to behave this way. I decided to wait for him to come to my parents' house and blocked his number. A week later, Jackson showed up at my parents' house, accompanied by his parents. They all wore serious expressions. I led them into the living room, and we faced each other, 3 against 3. How could you do this? How could you leave without my permission? Jackson demanded. Well, you were treating me like a housekeeper. All I asked you to do was take care of your family, I countered. That's not true. What kind of wife are you if you don't take care of Jackson? Helen shot me a fierce glare. My father began to tremble with anger, but I interjected. Jackson told me to quit my job and care for Helen, saying it was my duty as his wife. Yet, when it comes to my family, he expects me to handle everything alone. Ultimately, Jackson wants obedience and uses me to care for his parents while taking credit for it. That's why he prioritizes his parents over mine. Have you heard Jackson say these things? Helen continued to glare, but Carter looked confused, indicating he hadn't heard this before. Let's clear the air, Jackson said suddenly, bringing up the divorce papers and claiming it was Helen's idea. Why would you suggest that? Carter asked, clearly surprised. Oh no, it's because Camilla has an attitude problem, Helen stammered. And did you really say that Camilla's parents aren't a priority? I pressed. Well, it's only natural that your own parents come first, Helen retorted defensively. Don't be absurd. I came here to support you after hearing about the unfair treatment Camilla endured, but now it seems you're the one at fault. Don't hide behind your parents' authority to get your way, Carter said, making Jackson visibly shrink in his seat. Carter then apologized to me and my parents. I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my foolish son. I will have a serious talk with him. Carter, you're not to blame at all, so please don't apologize, I replied. Thank you for your kind words, but there's something else I need to say. Turning to Jackson, who was now nervous, I said, the divorce papers you gave me, I've already filed them. We're no longer married. Jackson and Helen both turned pale. Why did you file them without my permission? Jackson demanded, shocked. You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. Besides, you had already filled out your part and had Helen sign as a witness, I calmly explained. Oh, that was, Jackson stammered, clearly at a loss for words. Carter, furious, intervened. Jackson, you used divorce as a threat. He slapped Jackson across the face. Helen was visibly shaken by the confrontation. I apologize deeply that you had to witness this. You're right to divorce this fool. On behalf of Jackson, I'm truly sorry for ruining your marriage, Carter said, grasping Jackson by the collar and demanding apologies from both Jackson and Helen before escorting them out of the house. Later, I thanked Carter for his intervention. He ensured that all of Jackson's assets and property were transferred to me without any hassle. Despite my higher income and managing our household, it was a relief to secure everything from our marriage. I later learned that Carter had divorced Helen, clearly disgusted with her actions. The other day, I ran into a colleague from Jackson's old workplace who shared some surprising news. Jackson wasn't performing well at his job and often received harsh criticism from his boss. In defiance, Jackson resigned and changed jobs. This only added to my frustration with him. Instead of taking responsibility for his shortcomings, he blamed others, which likely contributed to his lower pay at the new job. I'm relieved to have left him. I've rented a cozy apartment and enjoy living independently. Work is going smoothly, and I even received a recent raise. Right now, I'm not interested in relationships and prefer focusing on my career. Jackson always cared more about appearances than actual abilities. He maintained a facade at home but failed to improve professionally. Sadly, many husbands use divorce threats as leverage, thinking they're powerful, but it's a big mistake. I hope they realize their folly and find happiness alone. Meanwhile, I'm grateful to have moved on from Jackson and look forward to meeting someone special in the future.